Soundbooth Theater presents The Heroic Villain. Written by Charles Dean. Edited by Joshua Swain and Richard Haygood. Narrated by Jeff Hayes. Featuring Justin Thomas James as Malik, Linnaeus, and other supporting characters, and Annie Ellicott as Shunguan, Bonnie, and the rest of the female cast. Special guest appearance by Annalisa Renee. Chapter 1.
And in today's news, despite founding CEO Lucas's abrupt retirement following the death of his wife and company co-founder, Yu Hua, Lu Yu Enterprises is on track to grow for its third consecutive quarter.
The news anchor on the television announced. Why do you do this to yourself? When has watching the news ever done anything more than leave you upset? Lucas grimaced and shook his head, deciding that it was best to listen to the voice of reason in the back of his mind. He pushed himself up from the chair he was seated in, turned off the television, and shuffled over to the dive capsule in the next room. The machine only took up about the same amount of floor space as a large love seat, but it was by far the most dominant feature in the apartment, looming over him at 7 feet tall. The capsule was reclined back at a 45-degree angle, and the door unsealed itself with a small hiss when he pressed a button on the front of the pod. Out of habit, Lucas looked around at the mass of internet, fluid, and diagnostic cables that sprouted from the back of the machine and crept across the floor before disappearing into the wall. The company had tested running the machine wirelessly and had even allowed users to provide their own internet connections during the device's beta 8 years ago, but the mental trauma caused by rubber banding at even the slightest bit of lag in a virtual world was so severe that professional therapists had been hired to consult with the testers. Although virtual reality had become commonplace in everyday life, those few early adopters had been traumatized so greatly that they still refused to even come close to the machine. Lucas crawled into the pod, turned it on, and was immediately greeted by several messages that were simultaneously displayed as text and read out loud. A melodious female voice that made even the drabbest and dullest of notifications sound pleasant chimed,
"You have 4 missed calls from Liu. Would you like to return her call before beginning immersion?"
"No," Lucas answered curtly. No matter how agreeable the British-sounding voice made it seem, talking to Liu was absolutely not something that he wanted to do.
"You have 37 emails from 19 different sources. Would you like to review them before beginning immersion?"
"No."
"You have 2 text messages from your mother and 1 text message from Liu. Would you like to read them before beginning immersion?"
"Read me the 2 text messages from my mother. Delete the one from Liu."
Text message 1. "Are you still moping in your apartment on that damn game? It's been over 7 months. You need to get outside and exercise. I don't care what that propaganda nonsense says about the machine exercising your body better than you ever could yourself. You need real physical exercise. And make sure you're eating real meals. Don't just let that machine feed you. It's just creepy when people use those in-game meal services instead of the real thing. It's like they're some kind of vegetable in a coma just waiting to die." End of message. Would you like to leave a reply?
"Not yet. Read me the second message from her first."
Text message 2. "Liu called to check in on us again today. She said you still aren't returning her calls. You know that she was only doing what she thought was best. Why not cut her some slack and forgive her already? End of message. Would you like to leave a reply?"
Lucas stared up at the text for a moment, lost in thought. She's still checking in on them once a week? Whatever. It's not my problem. Yeah, let's leave a reply.
Excellent. What would you like to say?
Tell her, I'm still eating real meals, and I'm still taking walks every day. I'll come back and visit on the holidays. Love you, Lucas.
Well written. Your message has been delivered. Would you like to wait for a reply or begin immersion now?
Just begin the immersion process.
Please close your eyes and relax. Immersion process is starting.
The dive capsule began filling up with a slick gel, and the voice slowly became softer and softer with each passing word as Lucas's naked body was taken over by the liquid in the machine. Seconds later, the machine began accessing his brain, and music from one of his favorite composers, Vivaldi, wafted into his ears.
You may now open your eyes.
The system notified him. Lucas did as he was prompted and discovered that the tech display that he had been looking at moments ago from the inside of the capsule was gone. Instead, it had been replaced by a multicolored sea of flowers which stretched up a long hill. The sweet, fragrant smell of so many different blossoms filled his nose as he took in a deep breath of the crisp, clean outdoor air, and he felt the warmth of the sun against his skin. Perfect. Lucas smiled, savoring the world around him. He pulled the pack off his back and reached inside, retrieving a few of the things that he had prepared before logging out last time. A wheel of cheese, 2 bottles of wine, and a blanket.
I see you're getting started early today.
A sharp female voice said from behind him. It takes a great deal of effort to lie around and do nothing all day, Lucas replied without looking up from the work that he was doing, laying out a blanket. You have to put in a lot of preparation to do it right. The woman who had spoken to him walked up and plopped down on one side of the blanket, not leaving much room for Lucas to lie down.
After almost 2 years of steady practice, I assume you are the expert on the matter.
Are you inviting yourself again today? Lucas asked.
Of course. I have to study hard if I want to make it into the upper echelons of apathy and join your ranks, Master.
Whatever. Lucas simply shrugged indifferently and lay down next to her on the little bit of blanket she had left for him.
You're just letting me use your blanket because you're too lazy to shoo me off, aren't you?
She asked, scooting closer to him. Your words, not mine. Lucas reclined back and stared up at the sky. He slowly closed his eyes and then enjoyed the feeling of warm sunlight across his face. He remained that way for a long time, simply enjoying himself until he got hungry, and only then did he take a bite from the wheel of cheese.
Mine,
the woman declared. She snatched the cheese from his hand, took a bite from it, and then tossed it back to him. You should really learn to bring your own if you want. Lucas's words stopped cold when the sun's warmth and its light were suddenly cut off from his face. There was no chance it was a passing cloud. The weather in Hess was perfect. The only thing that could make shade was a person standing over him. Yet no other NPCs ever passed by this place. That meant that the individual blocking his light had to be a player. And players always spelled out discomfort. They always either wanted something from him or they wanted to do something to him.
Hey, brother,
a gruff voice grunted down from above him.
We're short 1 member for the opener quest.
Don't wanna.
Come on, you're the only person here who hasn't done the class assignment quest. Just help us out so we can get the full player party buff that comes from not using NPCs.
Why are you even bothering with him? I told you to just grab an NPC. A second voice whined. Lucas mentally added a +1 to the tally of people annoying him and blocking his sunlight. Negative hasn't killed a thing since he started playing, and he's been playing way longer than us. Negative. It was his nickname and claim to fame in the game. The moniker wasn't exactly creative, but it did hit the nail on the head. Rather than being related to his instant rejection personality, however, it was given to him because of the fact that he was negative level 71, which was an incredible feat that made him a unique entity in the game. One of the game's various penalties was that it actually allowed a player to regress in levels if he died too many times. The cost of dying grew progressively larger at the higher levels, meaning that a player could take a fairly substantial hit to his experience if he died, but in the early stages of the game, someone had to die between 3 to 5 times before the system would punish him. The class promotion quest was one of the first that a player could pick up, and it was also one of the easiest. Most people would finish it within the first hour of playtime and reach level 5, so no one had ever actually gone into the negative levels aside from him. His achievement had earned him a great deal of ridicule from other players. But he didn't care. The only things that concerned him were lying out in the sun, enjoying the fragrant aroma of flowers, and partaking of his wine. He had become such a permanent fixture on the hill that he had to occasionally deal with some jerk who wanted to kill him just to see if he would drop any money or if he was some secret event, along with some who wanted to kill him just for the fun of it. But that was the extent of his interaction with the rest of the world.
Well, there's a first time for everything. Come on, Negative. The system told us you're the only other player right now that hasn't done the quest yet, so it'd really help us out.
The gruff guy pleaded again.
Yeah, come on, Nya. Please.
A sweet-voiced woman begged. So many voices. So many annoyances. Having a conversation with so many people just felt problematic and cumbersome to him. Lucas squeezed his eyes tighter and turned over onto his side, leaving his back for the others to deal with. He knew the rude gesture was likely to tempt their anger, but it was almost certain to get his point across. Now, they'd either politely leave or just kill him, but the effect would be the same. He'd be free from their pestering.
If you don't go with them, then I won't be here to bother you tomorrow or the day after,
The woman lying next to him on the blanket said, causing Lucas's eyes to finally shoot open. What? Lucas rolled over and turned to look at her. Resembling a famous Chinese actress with long legs, a petite figure, and long, sleek black hair, she was the most stunning and beautiful NPC on the entire island. At least as far as Lucas was concerned, anyway. She had encouraged him to do stuff like this before on more than one occasion in the past, but that was simply relegated to something simple like picking up a crafting profession. This type of request accompanied by a threat was completely out of the ordinary for her.
Don't be dense.
She scolded, reaching up to tap her head with an index finger.
I spoke clearly. If you don't go help out these valiant young heroes, then I won't be here tomorrow. It's in your best interest. You're going to have to do it eventually.
The whiny-voiced male groaned, prompting Lucas to twist his head around and stare at him. The lanky fellow with spiked hair looked down at Lucas and continued. Wait, isn't she...
Yeah, I'm confused.
The girl from the group interjected, prompting Lucas to turn his attention to her. She was a willowy, frail-figured alfar with slightly pointed ears, and she puffed her cheeks out and stood with her hands on her hips, staring down at them on the blanket.
Yeah, she's, Dawn is right.
Gruff voice agreed. The large, barrel-chested man that looked like a fat, 6.5-foot-tall dwarf thumped his chest with his fist for emphasis.
You gotta do this sooner or later, so just man up and get it done. We'll go finish the quest, and you'll be back to see the sun in less than an hour.
Lucas looked over at the woman beside him. Dawn, are you sure you want me to do this?
Of course. I know all about their quest.
Dawn smiled, and her features lit up. As far as Lucas was concerned, she was even more radiant than the still-blocked sun.
It's important. If you don't rescue the sages from Shunguan's vile dungeon, then I dread to think of what will happen. Without them, the heroes of the next generation will never be trained in the arts and skills needed to overcome the evil forces seeking to dominate our world.
Lucas's earlier frown returned as he closed his eyes and tried to process what was going on. He pressed a hand against his forehead and rubbed his eyes as he weighed his desire to remain exactly where he was against his distaste for doing what was being asked of him. It took him a minute to process what was happening, chiefly because she was the main reason that he had never taken the quest and advanced in the game. Yet, here she was, the driving force pressuring him into doing it. Her face was both a lure and a curse in its own way. He hated how she looked nearly identical to Yu Hua, and loved the familiar presence that she brought with such a similar attitude and appearance. No. Even if she's not the one asking, I need to do this for myself. I really do need to move on. At least a little. And here is as good a place to start as any, he thought, relenting at last. If you guys need a fourth for the class selection quest, I'll do it. Just share the info.
What? Really?
The short girl's eyes widened in surprise.
This worked? Are we going to be the first people to group with Negative?
Thank you so much.
The gruff man extended a hand to pull Lucas up from the ground.
I'm Malik, this is Nick, and this is Valerie, and we'll make sure this quest goes smoothly for you.
As Lucas stood up, Nick also extended his hand. Yeah, thanks a lot for joining us. I'll share the quest info right away. Do you need the equipment set to do it? Nick was referring to the basic starting items, the wand, sword, shield, bow, scepter, daggers, and staff that were required to finish the class selection quest. Every person was given the items as soon as they started the game, But since Lucas had been playing for 7 months in real life, or over 21 months in game time, it was natural to assume that he might have pawned them and bought something else with the money. Or merely forgotten where he stashed them. "I have the gear," Lucas answered. He dusted himself off as he got to his feet and looked at the quest that had just been shared with him. "I can pick them up in town if you don't mind our swinging through."
Quest. The teachers of old. The chieftain of the were-rat tribe, Kuloko, believes you have the potential to overthrow the Imperium's tyrannical grip on Hess. He has sensed great potential in you, but worries that you will never be strong enough to break the shackles that have enslaved and tormented the non-human residents of Hess without the proper training. The only trainers worthy of such astounding potential have all been locked away by the Imperium, and their skills as educators are no longer available to the younger generations as they have been left to rot within the dungeon of the oppressive Lady Jun Guan. You must rescue them, earn their trust, and convince them to teach you. Without their knowledge, the power to save the people of Hess will forever elude you.
Town's too far. We brought gear,
Malik said, tossing a bundle of equipment at Lucas. "Thanks," Lucas answered, somewhat warily. He wasn't used to people being this friendly. Until recently, it had been fairly common for people to add Nancy to his nickname just before they attacked him, so he was naturally cautious and somewhat put off by the gesture. "Appreciate it, man,"
Don't let him steal the credit, Nya. It was my idea.
Valerie insisted.
but my money.
The dwarf snapped. "Well," Lucas took out 2 gold pieces and passed them to Malik. "Here, this should cover the expense." Malik looked at the money. Lucas knew that it was far more than the going rate for the gear, as each piece of gear would cost only a single silver coin, but he had handed over 2 gold ones instead, which equated to 20 silver or 200 copper.
"Didn't realize lying around doing nothing paid so well,"
Nick commented snidely.
That's because it doesn't.
Dawn said patiently, adding a slight smile.
Lying around all day doing nothing is what you do when you have enough money to not worry about getting paid.
The woman makes a point,
Malik agreed.
We don't have time to lie around and wait. Let's go kill some racist Imperium scumbags.
Lucas didn't bother saying anything as he watched the chattering group start off toward Lady Shunguan's mansion, which was a short 5-minute walk away. The large mansion had a mortarless rock facade and looked like a small fortress situated on the crest of a forest-covered hill. The surrounding woods set it apart from the other nearby mansions and manors, which were encompassed by simple farmland. Those same Imperium farms, where non-humans were forced to till and work the fields, were one of the hallmarks of the area. New players could pick up a variety of quests which involved freeing the serfs and allowing them to return to the forest or helping to restore the natural order of the land by killing the guards and overseers. It was the same save-the-world plot that every MMORPG force-fed its players at some point or another. The most annoying aspect of the quest Lucas had accepted was that it prevented players from wandering around and exploring either the surrounding area or the mansion. It was naturally designed to streamline the experience and prevent newbies from getting lost, but that meant that players were basically locked in and couldn't do anything else until it was completed. Once the small group arrived at the mansion, they snuck around back and discovered a secret door that was hidden underneath a patch of removable grass. What to do was fairly common knowledge at this point, but even if it wasn't, the quest's giant yellow glowing markers made it obvious. Thankfully, there really wasn't much to do. Once they approached the hidden entrance, the second part of the tutorial quest kicked in, and a status message appeared.
Welcome to the class selection quest. In order to familiarize yourself with the game, you will play each class for a portion of the dungeon. Don't worry which class you are given or in which order. An event will occur at the end that will allow you to select the class you are most comfortable with. Please select your first trial class by equipping your weapon set. Note, only one person may select each of the 4 base classes, fighter, rogue, healer, and mage, at any given time. If 2 players are holding a weapon set for the same class, the door to the dungeon will not open and the quest will not progress to the next step. Warning, Stat points will not be reset at the end of the quest. As such, we recommend players abstain from distributing points until they are certain which class they are going to pick. The difficulty of this dungeon should not require any prior farming or leveling to complete.
Dibs on going mage first, Nick shouted.
Ugh,
Valerie grumbled.
you can't. I really wanted it.
Malik looked over at Valerie.
She gets the first crack at it. We already talked about it.
Fine, Nick harumphed. I'll take the fighter then. Unless you want to stop me from picking that class too.
Malik glared at Nick for a second, but then relented.
No, it's all yours. I've wanted to take a crack at the rogue anyway.
Don't pick daggers. Pick the bow. You look so cool with the bow.
Valerie said, hovering around Malik as he pulled out the weapon. Lucas blanched at the excessive PDA, which made him feel slightly nauseous. While Nick was equipping his 2 swords, Lucas took off his pack and readied the healer's equipment, a magical scepter and shield. It was the only class that none of them had selected yet, so he didn't have much of a choice. The healer's scepter, much like the mage's staff, was not designed for physical damage. The inside had been hollowed out and loaded with what a computer geek from the early part of the century might recognize as something similar to a motherboard, but with magical circuitry that allowed its wielder to cast spells. All a player had to do was select which spell he wanted to cast on the handle and then channel holy energy into the weapon to cast the spell. The only thing that separated the mage's staff and the healer's scepter was that the size of the circuitry required to cast spells for a healer was much smaller, and instead of using a mage's unique energy, arcane energy, they required a healer's holy energy to cast spells. Restore health, force shield, purify, and second wind. They were the healer's basic skills, and each one required only 5% of a user's total holy energy at level 1. Restore health recovered a percentage of the player's health immediately, but it took 2 seconds to cast. Force shield created a small half-sphere in front of a player that would protect them from incoming damage, and purify cleansed a body of poisons or dealt damage to constructs or summoned entities. The last skill, Second Wind, was a stamina heal for rogues and fighters that restored 50% of their total stamina bar. It would have been a much more useful skill if it wasn't for the fact that stamina naturally restored itself, on average, 10 times faster than holy energy. Seems simple enough, Lucas concluded after going through the list. He made a mental note to remember which point on the scepter to channel his energy into for each spell. He also noted that, while the scepter felt rather sturdy and could be used as a means of bashing a foe to death, its hollow nature meant that it would deal very little damage compared to a solid, blunt instrument. The shield in his left hand might actually be a more reliable source of damage when hitting an opponent.
Sorry you got stuck being the AFK bot,
Nick snickered, flashing his teeth at Lucas. AFK bot was a throwback term for useless healers who had been rendered worthless as a result of their team never needing them or because their role was so mindlessly repetitive. Lucas just shrugged.
Stop messing with negative.
Valerie chided.
He gets picked on enough as it is. So if you keep teasing him, I'm going to beat you so much he'll have to use all of his holy energy just to keep you alive.
Malik and Lucas just watched on in silence as the two bickered back and forth. The door leading into Lady Shunguan's dungeon then opened to reveal a stone staircase leading downward. Torches were affixed to the walls on either side, providing light.
The bonus for having a full party of players with no NPC assistance has been activated. All experience has been increased by 10%. Loot has been adjusted for a full party, and additional loot has a chance of dropping.
Lucas was slightly curious as to how this quest would turn out, but he was by no means in a rush to reach the end. Malik, however, impatiently pushed the group forward after smacking Nick on the shoulder and pointing at the staircase.
Let's go, brother.
The two stopped arguing, and the group made their way down into the dungeon. About halfway down the 3-person-wide stairwell, Lucas noticed a group of human guards at the bottom dressed in chainmail. They all had their heads tilted back against the wall. They were sound asleep, and one of them was even snoring.
Let's kill them,
Malik said excitedly, knocking an arrow and preparing to fire.
let me show you how it's done.
Nick insisted. He hefted the 2 swords in front of him and charged down the stairs.
Malik let loose an arrow that struck one right in the lung, but Lucas's eyes were drawn to Valerie. She was obviously casting a rather large spell and had already spent several seconds channeling it by the time the others even started forward.
What is she doing?
He wondered, and then his eyes opened wide as he remembered what spell most likely came with the starter staff. Firebolt. Its area of effect was limited to a 5-foot circle around the target, but in tight, enclosed spaces, it was an incredibly useful skill. And likely a painful one for Nick, who had rushed ahead to engage in melee combat. Lucas felt a little panic pass through him as he realized that Valerie was probably just casting away without considering her ally's safety at all. He held his scepter up in front of him and began channeling holy energy into it. The process wasn't difficult at all, and the game's mechanics made it more or less intuitive. All he had to do was focus on channeling his holy energy through the scepter and then into the circuit for restore health. He just hoped that Valerie wouldn't turn Nick into a fried corpse before the end of the 2 seconds.
This is so fun!
Valerie squealed, releasing the spell. Just as expected, the basketball-sized fireball sizzled down the staircase as it shot straight for the rearmost guard. The ball of flame smashed into the sleeping man's face and then exploded outward in all directions, releasing a wave of heat that was noticeable even halfway up the staircase. When the smoke cleared, all 4 of the guards were dead, and Nick's side had been completely charred from the blast. The temporary fighter had figured out what was happening, but the spell was simply too fast to dodge. Thankfully, the damage over time effect from the burn had been immediately nullified by Lucas's healing spell, which landed at the perfect time to keep him alive. Ah, son of a milkman, that hurt! Nick swore before turning around. Did you manage to hit anyone besides me, Valerie?
Maybe?
She giggled.
Or maybe my firebolt was just as attracted to your backside as I was.
Come on, brothers. We have work to do.
Malik insisted, refusing to let them be sidetracked into more banter.
No time to worry about friendly fire.
Easy for you to say, Nick grumbled. Valerie hid her laughter even as she apologized.
Sorry. I'll try better next fight,
she promised. The group gathered on the landing at the bottom of the stairs, and Malik pointed out the next set of soldiers waiting for them down a short hallway. Valerie immediately began channeling arcane energy into her staff, and Nick looked at her and then sighed as Malik began shooting. Valerie's ball of fire scorched through the air, exploding in the middle of the 4 soldiers and killing all of them.
Congratulations. You have reached level -70. You now have 10 stat points available to allocate.
Lucas blinked.
That's not right,
He thought, opening up his status screen and looking at the point distribution.
You typically get 10 stat points plus whatever bonuses your prestige class gives whenever you level up, but my level was negative. How am I getting anything?
He stared at the status message, incredibly confused. Every time someone lost a level, they also lost the accompanying stats that went along with it. Despite his negative level, however, this had never been an issue for him since stats couldn't drop below 0, the base that everyone's character started out at.
What the hell? This is a serious cheat.
Lucas's eyes slowly shifted toward the total experience needed to get to the next level. It hadn't changed at all. He still only needed the incredibly small amount of experience a player normally required to grow from level 1 to 2. Great! I guess I won't get a chance at trying fighter because they made the enemies too easy and gave the caster an overpowered ranged spell, Nick complained, snapping Lucas back into reality.
You've already picked your class, brother, so just thank Valerie for making the experience go faster and negative for keeping you alive.
Whatever, Nick sighed. Well, since I leveled, give me a second to put my points into Arcanum.
Not going to wait until you pick your class?
Valerie asked. Why bother? Nick asked rhetorically. I already know what I'm going to be. The greatest spell staff the world has ever known! Once a player selected one of the primary classes, he'd be taught skills and given gear to help him in that profession. However, that didn't mean that he would be locked into that profession forever. Depending on how he distributed his points and what skills he learned, he could easily change how he functioned in the game. Spell Staff was an advanced class available to a player who started off as a mage and used spells that would have immediate close combat effects, like Flaming Staff or Lightning Touch, which would then be combined with melee weapons and physically damaging skills. Essentially, it was just a mixture of a mage and a fighter. Although spell staffs generally took longer to channel abilities than the average caster since their base arcane energy pool was smaller, they could create very deadly burst damage on targets, making them a very popular choice. Malik laughed.
Your ego is too much. The game has been out 8 years, and the best guilds have already closed their doors on recruitment. How are you going to get your hands on the magic boards you need to be one?
Whatever, Nick scoffed. There are plenty of how-to guides on Blueit for building spell staff magic boards.
Yeah, the lower-end ones. I'm not trying to be mean, but without the advanced specialized designs that are only available to the bigger guilds, you'll never be as good as other mages. You should temper your expectations,
Malik advised.
Yeah, that's why I'm going to play a mix of the ranger and the bard,
Valerie proclaimed proudly, pushing her chest out and tilting her head back as if she had just announced she had won a tournament.
That way, I won't be as dependent on items, and I won't need to be the best. The best will want me on their team.
Paladin here,
Malik said, turning his gaze toward Lucas. The paladin was, as one might imagine, just a simple combination of the healer and the fighter. It was essentially what Lucas would have been doing right now if he had been given the opportunity to attack anything. The major difference was that he didn't have any of the martial skill trees learned, and he didn't have any points into athletics, the stat that determined one's physical combat resource pool. Lucas looked at the three expectant faces, all curious what the infamous negative would pick. Truth be told, he didn't have a clue as to what to think about any of the classes yet, so he just shrugged and moved forward, hoping that a change of location would also change the topic. "Way to earn that name," Nick said from behind. "So negative." Lucas didn't get far, however, before they reached the end of the hallway. There was a door directly ahead, one to the left and one to the right. Before he could pick one, however, a status message popped up, prompting them to change weapons. "Dibs on mage this time!" Nick shouted. He quickly sheathed his swords, opened up his backpack, and took out the staff before anyone could object. Unlike standard game inventory systems, their backpacks were essentially just bags that shrank the items you put in them down to much smaller and more manageable sizes, but did nothing to reduce the weight of the items. For that reason, players would often set down their backpacks for boss fights or difficult battles, knowing that the system wouldn't allow non-party members to access them. If the player died, the backpack would travel to the spot where they respawned.
I'll take fighter this time, then,
Valerie said, taking out a sword and a shield.
Fine. Healer here,
Malik responded. Since rogue was the only option left over, Lucas decided to just go with it. He knew he could pull out a bow and contribute the same way that Malik had, but he couldn't ignore how effective Firebolt was at clearing the enemies from a distance. So, he fetched 2 daggers out of his backpack instead. This way, I'll be a lot more useful if we get stuck in close quarters combat. If we can attack from a distance, Nick will toast everything anyway. It will also prevent me from being charred like he was. The hallway they occupied wasn't that large, only just large enough for 3 people to squeeze uncomfortably next to each other and walk side by side with their shoulders touching. So when the doors all opened at once after they had each selected a new weapon and enemies appeared, maneuvering space quickly disappeared. What the? Lucas thought as he saw a guard exit each of the 3 doors, each with a weapon in hand. Ugh! Are you kidding me? Nick scrambled backward in order to avoid one of the guards that had decided to go after him. I switched from fighter to mage and now we're doing close combat? This is garbage!
There are more spells than Firebolt on that staff, brother.
Malik slammed one of the guards with his shield and followed up by striking the stunned man across the face with his scepter. Valerie began swinging both her swords wildly, likely out of reflex at seeing enemies appear right next to her, and didn't seem to bother activating any of the skills. Lucas stepped forward and jammed his dagger into the throat of the guard that had popped out of the door next to him. All 3 of the enemies were dead within a matter of seconds, and he was presented with yet another level-up message.
Congratulations. You have reached level -69. You now have 20 stat points available to allocate.
That is such a cheat,
Lucas thought, noticing that none of his companions had leveled yet. The experience requirement for each level was always higher than the last, making it significantly harder to get from level 11 to 12 than it would be to get from level 1 to 2. He had received the same amount of experience as the other two, roughly 250, yet he had gotten 2 levels, and they had only gotten 1.5. "Does this dungeon ever get harder?" Nick asked, obviously forgetting that games often loved to start players off with what were essentially single-button fights. This particular game was famous for being a step above the rest, and many automatically assumed this meant that the incredibly difficult, awe-inspiring dungeons found in the late game translated to the starting area as well. Unfortunately for Nick, a starter area was a starter area for a reason. A player could literally kite an entire zone of mobs together and blast them down with a single area of effect spell if he wanted to.
Sorry, brother,
Malik answered.
It's the first quest. This is it.
If you want to make it fun, we could just unequip our items and punch our way through to the final boss.
Valerie suggested.
With her difficulty, we could even punch the final boss to death.
That would make things more interesting, Nick agreed. But I really want to try out the staff and cast a spell. Valerie nodded.
Cool. You do that. I'll just...
She gave a wry smile and then darted farther into the dungeon, slamming the door behind her. Nick's mouth dropped as he stared at the door. Then, after a second, he recovered and darted after her, slamming the door behind him as soon as he left the room too. Lucas, having not really wanted to do anything in the first place, was fine watching them tear ahead and do all the work for him. As far as he was concerned, he was content with watching the status messages in the bottom right corner of his vision scroll past. Based on how quickly the experience messages accumulated, it was obvious how many kills one of the two was getting.
Sorry, brother.
Malik sighed as he reached his hand out and opened the door for Lucas.
She likes to tease him, a little too much sometimes.
No problem, Lucas said, walking through the door. It's no big deal.
You sure? Since you don't know what class you want to be yet, this is a very important stage for you. You should learn what you like and put together a plan for your character.
Nah, Lucas replied dismissively. I'm just gonna help you all finish this quest, go back to my usual spot on the hill, and enjoy my wine.
I've heard you've been playing for almost 2 years of in-game time, but you're still doing the same thing.
The disbelief and skepticism in Malik's voice was obvious as he spoke, and Lucas knew that many other people felt the exact same way.
Is that all you want to do? To spend your days eating and drinking in a virtual game? It doesn't sound like a fun future to me.
Lucas looked at him and then at the ground, sighing and brushing off the comment. The simulated buzz is just as good as the real one.
If you say so.
Malik shook his head, obviously not convinced. He walked up beside Lucas and continued saying,
But personally, I think spending all of your life lying around doing nothing doesn't sound like much fun.
Lucas gave him a sideways glance, not sure what had prompted this miniature lecture. Then, a status message popped up on his screen to let him know that he had leveled yet again.
Congratulations! You have reached level -68. You now have 30 stat points available to allocate.
Sorry,
Malik said.
I don't mean to pry. Just hoping you play the game so that we can do the whole Noob Island quest chain with maximum experience. We have healing, tanking, and damage covered. You can pick anything and it'll fit fine.
Lucas thought about responding, but in the end, he chose to just ignore the man. That type of gentle encouragement was the same type Yu Hua had often used to try and get him to come out of the house and do stuff with her. And once it started, it never stopped. The only way to get such people to stop pushing was to blow them off altogether. If he said maybe or shrugged it off, they'd just keep pestering him. Nick and Valerie cleaned up a group of the most incompetent minions to ever appear in a video game at the far end of the long stone hallway, and Malik and Lucas arrived to find that they were still at each other's throats. The door required all 4 of them to switch classes yet again. Will you let me kill at least one already? Nick snapped, We're halfway through the dungeon, and I still haven't fought anything.
It's not my fault you're so slow at the game, Mr. Greatest Spell Staff.
She snapped back. Malik gave another apologetic glance and then began switching gear.
I'm going to take the mage this time,
Malik said, looking over at Lucas to see if he was okay not playing the class once more. Then I guess I'm the fighter, Lucas concluded.
Healer!
Valerie eagerly called, which meant that Nick was left with Rogue, the only remaining class. Nick equipped a bow rather than the daggers, probably hoping to get some use out of it before someone else scored a kill, and Lucas couldn't help feeling bad for the guy. The first hallway had been long and straight with no enemies on either side, but the farther they got into the dungeon, the more turns they made, and the more enemies seemed to appear right next to them. The bow was the worst choice if Nick really wanted to finally see action. The others eagerly switched their gear while Lucas put away his daggers. Since unarmed combat was technically a combat branch open to the fighter, Lucas figured he'd take that lazy route and punch anything that came close while letting the others handle the rest, exactly as Valerie had jokingly suggested. The next dungeon door opened, and a group of feral were-rats rushed into the hallway the moment they had enough room to squeeze through the opening.
I thought this wasn't supposed to be difficult.
It's the final non-boss encounter,
Malik explained when he saw the confusion on Lucas's face.
We beat these guys and then that's it. The only thing left to do is kill the boss and free the 4 teachers.
Lucas didn't even have time to say thanks. He had stupidly chosen the unarmed combat route while thinking he wouldn't have to put in any effort. But the enemies were now swarming around them. The were-rats were medium-sized humanoids just over 5 feet tall and completely covered in rat hair. They had beady red eyes, protruding snouts filled with razor-sharp canines, and disproportionately long arms with claw-tipped fingers. The first were-rat through the door charged directly at him and swiped toward Lucas's chest, but Valerie interceded on his behalf. She slammed into it hard from the side, sending the beast careening off into its ally. Both it and another were-rat bounced off the wall and then crumpled to the floor, dead. I guess there's a lot of them, but they seem to be pretty frail and low-leveled, Lucas reasoned when he saw how easily they died. Lucas punched the next closest enemy in the gut as it slashed at him. The were-rat's attack connected with his shoulder, and its long claws left behind 3 large red scratches as they dragged across his skin. The creature's attack barely shaved off a sliver of his health before Lucas's first punch doubled over the beast. His second was aimed at its open jaws and sent it flailing backward. The were-rat landed on its back, belly up, and dead.
Shield!
Malik yelled, throwing a firebolt into the doorway. Valerie responded perfectly, casting Force Shield as soon as she heard the command. The barrier of holy energy snapped into place, and Lucas watched through the clear barrier as the ball of flame engulfed the were-rats surging through the door. The flames bounced back toward them, but were stopped from even coming close when they made contact with the protective barrier. Force Shield also just so happened to block the arrow that Nick had finally shot after running back and putting some distance between himself and the enemies.
Son of a...
Nick shouted, rather angry at the situation.
Are you kidding me? Why does this keep happening to me? This is some capital BS! This is some snot-covered nonsense!
I'm pretty sure that phrase you just used is nonsense.
Valerie giggled.
Anyway, don't be mad. At least you got to use a weapon finally like you wanted.
But I didn't kill anything!
Nick shouted loudly. He put away his bow as he stared angrily at the doorway, which was littered with dead bodies.
This is garbage. First dungeon, and I still haven't killed a single thing. Garbage!
Ignore him.
Malik sighed as he watched Valerie and Nick bicker back and forth.
I'd just like it if he weren't so loud,
Lucas said, pretending to be annoyed with the volume so he didn't have to take sides on this issue. In reality, he agreed with Nick a little. Personally, he didn't care about this quest. He was doing it because Dawn had asked. But if he were in Nick's shoes, he'd be just as mad. Truth be told, Lucas had held major grievances with games in the past simply because they weren't balanced at the start due to how easy monsters were. Damage classes excelled as a result, and monsters crumpled so fast that players rarely got to feel exactly what their role was like until it was too late for them to change their mind.
True,
Malik agreed as they started forward. He looked over at Lucas.
So, Why have you never done this mission before? It should only take 5 or 10 minutes, and it's usually the first thing anyone does when they log into the game.
Lucas's eyes were glued to the door, and his heart raced a little as he thought of the reason.
I just didn't want to see her die again,
Lucas said, thinking of Yu Hua's face. Lucas closed his eyes and shook his head to stop his thoughts from wandering.
No. Never.
No reason, he lied.
Okay. Never mind. But if you went this long without doing it already, why are you doing it now?
Because she asked me to, Lucas answered matter-of-factly. Malik laughed from deep in his belly.
Can't say no to a pretty face? Well, that I can understand. Women are my soft spot, too.
He shot Valerie a glance.
But you know, she's just an NPC, right? It doesn't matter if she dies or not. They're only programmed to show reactions that make you think they're suffering. The Anti-AI Cruelty Act passed a while back made sure of that.
Even so.
Well, whatever you say, brother.
Malik patted him on the back as if he were trying to offer some small amount of assurance or comfort.
You can just sit in the back and close your eyes if you have to. We'll finish the quest quickly, and she'll respawn back in town. You'll both be back to enjoying your cheese and wine right after.
Thanks, I guess. Lucas looked over at Nick, who had already reached the door and switched his class yet again, and he couldn't help but add, "Just don't let him get the kill." Malik snickered.
Right. Since he's stuck as a healer, shouldn't be hard to stop him from doing any damage.
Lucas let the conversation stop there as he pulled out the mage staff and switched his class yet again. The mage staff, like the healer's, was a weapon with a concealed magic board designed to help a magician turn his arcane energy into a useful form. Once channeled, the energy could be turned into either a defensive spell, an offensive spell, or a utility spell, but unlike the Holy Energy Board, the magic wasn't channeled in a single direction. The board found in a mage's staff acted as both the energy source as well as the grounding point for every magical transistor in the staff. This meant that some of the energy also flowed back into the mage as well as into the staff, where it would be used to power the crystals and eventually the spell. In addition, this system could slowly change the caster's energy into one with an elemental property. If a spell user only used ice spells, then over time, his energy would have a greater cold property innately built into it, allowing the magician to cast more powerful ice spells while at the same time making it difficult to cast even basic fire spells. Or altogether impossible if the magician's energy had become too attuned to ice. The beginner's magic staff only had 4 simple spells. Firebolt took 2 seconds to charge at level 1 and required 2 arcane energy before turning into the low damage area of effect spell that, while deadly at starter levels, was relatively harmless as players grew stronger. Zap took 5 seconds to charge at level 1 and required 5 arcane energy, but sent a bolt of electricity through the air and into the selected opponent. This spell was great for boss fights nearly the entire way through Noob Island because it did great single-target damage. Next, there was the Earth Spike, which required 3 arcane energy and sent a sharp spike out of the ground or wall and toward the target. Finally, the last spell was a simple ice attack, Frost Breath. It only required 1 arcane energy to cast and could then be channeled continuously, making it the fastest castable skill on the staff. Unfortunately, the spell also did the least damage. It was great for removing trash mobs quickly and slowing down enemies that were charging at you, but because it was a channeled spell that couldn't accept more than 1 arcane energy per second no matter how high level the mage was, it was terrible at dealing damage to anything over level 5 or so.
Remember, this boss is easy. You can just sit it out if you need, brother,
Malik said.
With Valerie healing, I can tank her the entire time. You just relax.
Thanks, Lucas said. Nick and Valerie pushed open the giant double doors that led to the final confrontation in the quest. Whereas the dungeon had consisted of dark and dreary stone walls, the boss room was a lavish mahogany-framed room with 4 white stone pillars and a beautiful red rug covering a white stone floor. On the far side of the room, there were 4 large metal cages, each 3 feet by 3 feet wide, with bars as thick as a man's forearm. Each contained a different non-human elder. There was an old male werebear stuck in his half-shifted form with bare ears and fur-covered arms, an elderly alfar, a tree ant whose bark had grayed, and a dwarf that appeared to be more white, frizzy beard than man. These captives were leaned forward, grasping on the cage's bars, and their weathered eyes were locked on the group of newly arrived players with the desperation of the enslaved. The rest of the room was relatively empty, with the exception of a woman who was seated in a chair that somewhat resembled a throne in the middle of the room, dead center between the 4 pillars. Dawn grinned at the group and began clapping as the 4 walked in.
Bravo! Well done. Or, well, at least something along those lines.
Lady Shun Guan said.
I'm glad you could see it in your heart to butcher my men before payday. It saves me a lot of money.
Ha! Not like you're going to live long enough to spend it, garbage NPC! Nick taunted. He held up his healing mace and waved it threateningly as if it were the deadliest weapon in the world. Let's bash this broad in and go turn in the quest!
Ugh, this is why no one likes you.
Valerie snapped, smacking Nick on the arm and shaving off a few points of his health as she did it. Lucas suspected that she was acting this way on his behalf.
What? Are you just going to stand there the whole time and scowl at me?
Shun Guan said while staring at Lucas.
Don't be so negative. Cheer up and greet me properly.
Fine, Lucas grumbled. He despised being part of a group whose intention was to kill her. How are you, Dawn? He used her other name purposefully, calling her by the fake name she went by as they ate their meals together on the hill, lying out and basking in the sun day after day.
Something is off,
Malik interjected as he strode to the front of the group.
She's supposed to have 2 guards helping her during the fight. Where are they?
Oh, those 2? I sent them home. They always interrupt me and spout out terrible monologues. It's all really quite dull. What's the point of it all? I spend all that time and money training them, and then they just keep dying as soon as they finish their taunts. So I just got rid of them.
But you're going to die too, Nick said. Why worry about who else is going to follow you into the grave, you Nick stopped, letting out an "Ow!" before he could finish his insult. Sorry!
Brothers, something is off,
Malik warned, his voice heavy with caution.
How is she aware of her past lives in the quest? Something isn't right.
Yeah, it's kind of creepy.
Valerie agreed.
NPC AI is supposed to ignore previous deaths when they respawn. That way, each person doing the quest will get to feel like it's the first time the quest has been completed.
Shun Guan nodded.
Oh, yes, you're absolutely right. That is the case. An NPC wouldn't be able to remember what happened in its previous iterations. That'd just be cruel.
But then...
Malik stumbled on the words, his dwarven face twisting up as he stared at Shun Guan. He wasn't the only one. The whole party had lost their zeal and was staring at her, confused at what was happening.
Come now, you know the answer. Just ask the question already.
Shun Guan encouraged, her demeaning tone causing Nick's face to twitch in anger.
Doesn't that mean you aren't an NPC?
Malik asked hesitantly.
Ah, bravo!
Shun Guan laughed as she stood up, clapping her hands patronizingly.
You're right. I'm not an NPC. I'm an evil, underpaid, overworked middle management staffer taking on the role of her favorite character, just like I have been doing since I first got my job at this company.
What?
Lucas was suddenly at a loss, and the revelation left him reeling, unable to put words together. He knew that Dawn or Shun Guan, or whatever her name was, seemed realistic compared to other NPCs, but he had never once imagined that someone had been controlling the character. He didn't know how to process the fact that he had been talking to her as if she were nothing more than a blank canvas, bouncing his private thoughts and frustrations off of her without ever once considering the possibility that a real person was listening to him.
But that doesn't make sense. Why would anyone take over that NPC?
Malik asked.
Yeah, she's terrible. Her stats are abysmal, and she dies every time someone has to do the starting quest. Why wouldn't you pick a better one?
Valerie asked.
Oh, I have my reasons.
Xunguan said slyly.
And everyone has to start somewhere, right? That is what this is all about. The starting quest, isn't it?
Yeah, but we're going to have to kill you,
Malik said.
And why are you even bothering telling us all this?
Why not just be cute and die?
Valerie asked, twirling her daggers around as she smiled at Xunguan.
Die, right. That is what happens next. Lucas, could you be a dear and do me a tiny favor really quick?
What do you want this time? Lucas sighed as he asked her the question, knowing full well what she was about to ask him. He wanted to delay her request as long as possible, however, since he knew that this interaction was about to grow a lot more complicated, and he wasn't prepared for the engagement that was going to follow yet. Since he was currently holding a magic staff, he decided to up his chances of survival by quickly assigning 10 of his available skill points into Arcanum, raising his total arcane energy pool from 100 to 200. This not only doubled the number of spells that he could cast, but since his total pool was doubled, it also meant that he could cast every spell in his arsenal twice as fast.
Are you really going to make me spell it out?
Xunguan asked. She was smiling as if she already knew that she'd get her way and that Lucas would do exactly what she wanted.
I'm not really in the mood to die, so could you please kill these people off for me?
Malik, Nick, and Valerie all turned around to see what Lucas was going to do. Lucas just stood there, unmoving and rooted in place.
Just close your eyes, brother. You don't have to watch. We'll take care of this quest for you. Enough now!
Malik lunged toward Xunguan, his sword out in front of him, ready to attack. Don't have to tell me, Nick grumbled, holding his shield up and rushing the noblewoman. Stupid quest is creeping me out! Valerie laughed.
So much pointless drama! Let's just get this over with and head to the tavern while we figure out point distribution.
In his head, Lucas was already playing out the 100 different ways it might look as she died, her face overlapping with its counterpart, and he could feel his heart tightening as he lost himself in her gaze. Xunguan, who was being charged by 3 players, looked over at Lucas expectantly.
Please save me.
Her arrogant tone was gone, her gaze was filled with fear, and her voice was almost pleading.
I don't want to die again. Please. I don't want to die again.
She looked just like her. The situation was too much. Lucas squeezed his eyes and tried to ignore her, but even as he did, he could feel his arcane energy being channeled into the staff. It spread through the right resistors and transistors and activated the spell. I'm sorry, he muttered to the players' backs. I'm not watching her die again. He unleashed Zap. A string of electricity shot out of the top of his staff, arced through the air, and slammed into Malik. The dwarf apparently hadn't put any of his stats into Fortitude yet, and there was no warning for Nick to cast the healer's protective barrier. The lightning coursed through the man's body freely, forcing him to stop dead in his tracks as his muscles tensed up. He crashed to the ground, dead, seizing up and shaking violently.
You have killed Malik, another player. You have been awarded 10 experience. A sturdy leather belt and 75 copper have dropped upon death. Due to killing another player outside of a player versus player event, you have been flagged red. Players will easily be able to identify you as a player killer by the red halo above your head for 24 in-game hours, or until you die. This is something that only players will be able to identify, not NPCs. You will also drop twice as much loot and lose twice as much experience upon death. Any player who kills you will not suffer this penalty. For killing your first player, you have been awarded the suffix, the murderer. This suffix has no effect. It is simply added to one's name.
What in the Sam Hill, negative? Nick shouted. He turned and charged straight at Lucas with his shield raised and his holy mace in hand. Valerie also stopped her assault on Dawn and turned her attention to Lucas, her daggers held in an awkward reverse grip as if she were wielding ice picks instead of knives. Lucas channeled another spell and aimed a firebolt at the ground in front of the pair as they started toward him. He knew that Valerie would likely dodge the spell if it were aimed at her, but the ground wouldn't move, and that made it the perfect target for his area of effect spell. Lucas began readying a second spell the moment the first was cast, but Nick surprised him. The moment the second firebolt left his staff, Nick created a force shield halfway between them. The flaming ball crashed into the barrier of holy magic and splashed back toward Lucas. Flames licked around him, singeing the hair on his arms and stripping away 20% of his health. I was too careless, Lucas grumbled. The magic shield dropped, and the two players ran through the spot where it had been, meaning that they were already too close for him to effectively use another firebolt. Zap would take too long to cast before they reached him, and Earth Spike would only hit one of them, so Lucas focused his arcane energy into the least used spell in the game, Frost Breath. Frost Breath was relatively useless due to its low damage, and it was rarely used since most groups had someone to tank and someone to heal, but when it came to fighting melee enemies, it did have one thing that gave it an incredible advantage. It could snare an opponent and drastically reduce his movement speed. It only took a half second to cast the spell, and as soon as it was done, the energy coursed backward through his body, welled up from his stomach, and streamed out of his mouth. His jaws opened as wide as he could stand, and a torrent of ice-cold air shot out of him right toward the enemies. He turned his head back and forth, trying to evenly distribute the attack into a conical shape in front of him, and he silently celebrated as both of his assailants' steps were snared by the spell's chilling effect. They inched closer to him at a drastically reduced pace, a little over half of their health bars left, and then, with only another second before they would be able to strike him down, Lucas bolted. He only had the basic amount of stamina the game afforded every new player, so he would only be able to maintain a decent speed for a short time before slowing, but he knew that neither Nick nor Valerie was likely any better off. Plus, he didn't have to go far. Lucas sprinted back out of the room and into the hallway, only stopping once to see how closely they were following. By his estimate, he had roughly a 4-second lead before the duo caught up with him and mauled him to death. He began charging up another firebolt as he ran, hoping to finish both of them off in one go, but as soon as the flames started to course through the staff, he noticed that Nick's holy energy was being channeled into his scepter. So, you're gonna try the same trick on me again. Lucas held his spell until the very last moment and then canceled it right before Nick's force shield activated and snapped into place. Lucas slid to a halt and instantly turned his attention to channeling Zap rather than running. This time, when the shield collapsed and disappeared, Lucas fired the already charged spell. The vibrant blue and purple streak of lightning arced through the air, briefly lighting up the hallway before speeding through the doorway and smashing into Nick. The man was dead before he even hit the floor.
You have killed Nick, another player. You have been awarded 10 experience. A beginner's magic staff and 14 copper have dropped upon death.
Why are you doing this, Negative?
Valerie whined.
This isn't fair! How can you do this to us?
Lucas didn't know what to say, so he just silently swapped back to Frost Breath and ensnared the rogue before she could get close to him. It was over for her. Without Nick to cast defensive shields or to heal the damage Lucas inflicted, Valerie was in an untenable position since her opponent could essentially just kite her around for the rest of the fight, slowly damaging her with ranged attacks while staying just out of reach. This strategy was annoyingly predictable, but still a tried-and-true, time-honored method of killing melee fighters as a mage, and it was exactly what he intended to do. Given how little damage the Frost Breath did, however, Valerie still had ample time to complain while he was doing it.
Seriously, just let me live!
Valerie pleaded.
I promise, I won't do anything to anyone. I just want out of here.
Lucas actually considered it, even if only for a brief moment. The only reason he didn't let her off the hook was that she was persistently heading toward him, even if at such a slow pace that she could probably lose a race to a tortoise. Even if she stopped, he wouldn't trust her not to kill him the second they had to cross paths. As such, even though he felt a little bad about finishing her off, he didn't feel like he had much choice. He knew that he'd only be costing her a minute or two of her time and some experience at most. "I'm really sorry," he said, as he looked directly into her eyes and cast Frost Breath for the final time. He knew exactly what happened when a player died and how much good smart bottomed out pain sensitivity levels and all. He watched as her body froze up and a thin, blue coat of snow-like moisture crept across her skin. The crystalline layer formed first on her extremities and then crept inward in a glistening sheen, perfectly capturing her annoyed and frustrated facial expression as she finally froze over. He felt bad having to kill his own party members, especially ones who had helped him through the dungeon and offered to do all of the work for him. But part of him didn't hate it. Part of him actually enjoyed the thrill. He had been in control of almost the entire fight, but even so, he had been unsure of whether he would win or not. His heart was still beating at a mile a minute, and he didn't even realize it until the moment the fight was over. But he had felt alive. The adrenaline, the challenge, the thrill, it all made him feel, and that was something he hadn't experienced in over a half year of real lifetime. Before he could even read Valerie's death notification or the level up notification, his thoughts were interrupted by the sound of Shunguan's clapping.
Good job,
Shunguan said.
You did beautifully.
I'd rather not have, Lucas retorted. Why did you tell me to do this quest if you were just going to have me turn on my allies at the end? Shunguan began waving her hands about as if she were performing for a crowd.
Because I needed you to prove your deep-seated feelings to me. Only through a beautiful display of—
I don't have any, Lucas interjected, cutting her off. I think of you as a friend. Nothing more.
Is that so?
Shunguan asked. She shrugged as if it didn't really matter after all and plopped back down on the chair.
A pity. I never thought a woman of my caliber would be stuck in the friend zone.
She reached around behind her chair and retrieved a small bag from which she produced the block of cheese Lucas had been working on before he began the introduction quest. Only it was already half-eaten.
You still hungry?
You didn't answer my question, Lucas said pointedly. Why did you make me choose between their lives and yours?
Ah, right.
Shunguan bit into the cheese block and then answered around her mouthful as she chewed.
I do suppose I owe you an explanation. You see, I'm having a problem here.
She paused long enough to swallow and then take another bite.
I've spent years of my life maintaining and improving this video game, and with the way the game stretches out time, I might as well have given it decades.
And, he asked expectantly, what does that have to do with taking this quest and killing people? She pulled out the bottle of wine that Lucas had prepared for his lazing about earlier in the day, took a healthy swig from it, and then continued.
Well, you see, normally it wouldn't. I'd do my job, help with the promotions and advertising, and then meet you on the hill for some of this delicious cheese and wine at the end of a hard day's work.
She trailed off, swallowed, and took another swig from the bottle.
But sadly, no matter how much I try, this game is dying. Players hit the top level, they finish the final bosses, and then that's it. The game is over. They quit. Some stick around, roleplay fun roles, build castles with their teammates, or just grind out the same bosses over and over for money and drops. But most leave. For the longest period of time, this wasn't a problem. Every now and then, we'd use the money from the new subscribers to release content patches that would drag the old players back to the game for a new raid boss or challenge.
But, Lucas asked, anticipating the next word as Shunguan had stopped talking to take another bite from the cheese.
But we scrape by with a little less each time. The cycle gets shorter, and we are now at the point where the investors and company owners don't feel like it's worth making another content patch at all. The game won't last more than a year at this rate.
I'm still not getting what this has to do with me completing this quest and then killing my teammates, Lucas huffed. He was starting to get impatient with her lackadaisical attitude and inability to reach a conclusion. It felt like she was purposefully dragging her feet on the subject.
Because you're going to be my solution. The fix to my problem so that I can keep my job and so that the game I love doesn't fade away. If the devs upstairs won't write the code to generate a new endgame dungeon, then I'm just going to have to make one myself. I wanted to start with encouraging regular PvP at the top level to keep players interested and keep the content feeling fresh. But with the massive potential level and item losses that come with PvP, the endgame players were too cowardly or passive to off each other and start a war. It takes a full day of grinding to recover from a single death at those levels, so I can't blame them for not wanting to start large-scale conflicts with each other. Yet, without them, The game isn't going to last. That's why we're going to have to start here at the bottom.
Lucas could see exactly what she was asking of him. Wait a minute. You mean to say that you want me to stir up trouble and create a player versus player environment on Noob Island? The starting zone?
Bingo!
Xunguan cheered.
Your reward? A chunk of cheese!
She tore off a large handful of Gouda and tossed it to him. That doesn't make sense. Even if I make this area into a PvP zone, that won't change the end game at all. The top-end players will still be just as bored, and you'll still lose subscribers at the same rate as before. Lucas caught the cheese, only then realizing that he had automatically gone from simply hearing her out to actually thinking about the logistics of her plan. Admittedly, his mind was now racing to point out each and every flaw and pick them all apart. Xunguan nodded.
Right. The end game will still be awful. There is no immediate plan we can put together to fix it. But this world was built on a lot more than just what people do once everything else has been accomplished. This game is built on alts and how fun they can be to play. Since players can't respec or change their stats, they roll new characters all the time. Some people start over every time there's a new content patch. Or, hell, they used to.
So, if you can't keep them playing up there, you decided to come up with a reason to have them play again down here. And you think I can be that reason. You want me to tick off enough people that they even beg and scrape to get their friends at the top level to remake on Noob Island to kill me. Lucas was slowly starting to understand her plan. Noob Island had a level cap, so if someone wanted to beat him or help their friends, then they would have to remake a brand new character to do so. It would get them building new characters and thus extending how long they played the game.
Not quite, but you're almost there,
Xunguan said leadingly.
I don't need you to tick off players. I need you to make new game content.
New game content? He asked skeptically.
Yes, new game content. If this game is going to survive, it needs excitement. It needs a dungeon that is tougher than a walk in the park and, of course, a new boss that people want to kill.
So the game needs a new villain. Lucas rattled those words around in his head for a moment. That sounds fine, but you're going to need someone else. He turned around, ready to leave the dungeon behind and return to his flower-covered hill. Before he could take a single step, however, she had already jumped out of her seat, dashed across the floor, and grabbed onto his arm. She turned him around and held onto his elbow so that he couldn't leave, forcing him to look at her.
Please,
she pleaded, staring into his eyes.
Please help me. There is no one else I can turn to.
Nonsense, Lucas insisted. Just bat your eyelashes and find some white knight to do your bidding for you. You don't need me. Now, if you don't mind, I have a grassy field, an afternoon snack, and a bottle of wine to tend to.
Actually, I still have your wine and your afternoon snack,
Xunguan corrected.
But the reason I asked you to do this is that you're the only one who has the actual stat potential to turn into a boss on this island. You're the only one in the game with a negative level.
Lucas froze. You know then.
Yeah, I know. By the time you actually even hit level 1, you'll have at least 700 stat points more than every other player on the server. Even if you completely butcher your point distribution, you'll still be more powerful than every other player. You have to realize that. Your broken character is the only one that is perfectly made to be a boss in this game. And that makes it perfect for the role of our game's new Noob Island villain. Besides...
Lucas jerked his arm free of hers and took a step back so that there was a small bit of room between them. Besides what? The fact that you're going to tell me that the only reason you've been hanging around me is because you knew my character fit the parameters you needed?
Stop being so dramatic,
Xunguan contended. She stepped forward and grabbed him by both of his forearms, and it was then that he noticed that there was a bit of moisture forming in her eyes.
I need you. Not just because you have the perfect stats, but because you also have no life at all.
What? Lucas was dumbfounded by the statement. He had no idea what kind of person tried to ask someone for a favor by insulting them in such a manner.
Oh, come on! I get paid full-time to monitor this game, so I'm at the office every day, overtime included, and I've never once logged in and not seen you already on. It's like you don't have a job, a family, friends, a pet, or anything else. You have no life. You might as well already be an NPC in this game, so why not just act like one? For me. Okay?
Lucas thought about it for a minute. He was ready to turn around and walk out of the room, leaving this crazy office lady and her NPC hijacking act alone. But something made him hesitate. Some part of him, some long-forgotten or newly reborn part of him, refused to let him turn and leave. Seconds ticked into minutes, and yet he remained indecisive. Fine, he agreed, finally capitulating. I'll do it. But even if I'm helping you out, I'm not going to be your pawn. If I don't like a part of your plan, count me out. I don't want you thinking that I'll always say yes to your requests just because I said it here.
Excellent. It's a deal then.
She agreed, smiling at him.
In that case, let's make it official.
Make it official? Lucas asked, curious as to what she could possibly mean.
With a quest,
she explained, and her words were joined by text appearing in front of him.
Quest, the teachers of old. Alternate route, dog of the Imperium. The chieftain of the were-rat tribe, Kulako, believed that you would be the one to overthrow the Imperium and free the people of Hess. He had trusted you, trusted your potential, and trusted your nature as he sent you on a quest that would inevitably lead to the betterment of the lives of all non-human residents of Hess. You, however, have been given an alternate route by the esteemed lady, Jun Guan. Power, knowledge, and education do not only lie solely in the hands of the trainers Kulako has instructed you to free, but also in the books and teachers of the Imperium. If you choose to turn your back on the rebellion, you must prove your dedication by killing the only rebel trainers who would be capable of educating you. Destroy the 4 sages locked away by Lady Junguan and, in doing so, earn your place within the ranks of the Imperium.
Lucas studied the quest message. Earn my place within the Imperium. He looked up from the messages to see the 4 sages' drooping eyes locked onto him. So, if I kill them, I'll be the first player to have joined the cliched villains camp. He slowly walked forward.
Boy, think about what you're doing before you execute us. If we die here, so do the dreams and hopes of thousands of people. Don't shoulder that sin,
the tree ant in the middle right cage said as Lucas got closer.
Yes,
the werebearer entreated.
Think of all those who are oppressed and do the right thing. Even if they aren't your kind, they are still people. They still have feelings, hopes and dreams. If you let us die here, then you are damning those hopes and dreams to obscurity and forcing the worst fate, the fate of a slave, on them.
Listen to them,
the elderly Alfar woman encouraged him.
I can tell you're a good man. I can tell you want to do the right thing, so don't let us down. Free us, and together we can put an end to the Imperium's tyranny.
Lucas sighed. He had heard this type of quest banter and these type of good versus evil parallels in nearly every video game that he had played and every young adult book that he had read since he was old enough to do either. It was always, the bad guys are bad and the good guys are good, so be the good guy. It was part of what turned him off of the game's storyline when he originally started playing and made it so easy to simply lean back and enjoy the gluttonous pleasures the game had to offer. Lucas began channeling arcane energy into the staff. Well, I guess, at the very least, the plot will change a little for once. He finished Zap at the same time as he finished his sentence, and the blue and purple light flashed forward into the werebearer, causing the other 3 to yell and cry out in shock and fear. Lucas knew that it was just a programmed response and that at no point did they ever feel pain or fear, but it still caused him to cringe and pull back momentarily as he heard their lamentations. He turned to the next one after the first was dead and began charging up a different spell. He had seen Zap, Firebolt, and Frost Breath, but he hadn't seen the Earth Spike skill yet. It took only a second and a half to prepare, and then a giant spike erupted from the ground, impaling the gray-barked tree ant with a narrow, conical spike. His body was lifted up and suspended in the cage, leaving the corpse's feet to dangle. Somewhat happy with the way that had turned out, Lucas decided to repeat the process on the dwarf in the next cell. Afterward, he finished the last one off by freezing her to death with frost breath. As the elderly Alfar woman was frozen into a statue, a quest notification appeared in front of him.
Quest route activated. Dog of the Imperium, Part 2. You have burned the bridges of opportunity with the rebellion in Hesse, and in doing so, you have placed your feet firmly in the Imperium camp. Even though you have earned a place within the Imperium, however, it is at the bottom. A traitor to the rebellion, you are currently considered lower than a dog and must climb your way up the ranks if you wish to make something of yourself in the future. To do this, you must first earn a title of nobility. There are several methods of accomplishing this, but until you have earned at least the lowest title, the soldiers and members of the Imperium will never fully embrace you as one of their own, and never share the secrets of their craft openly to you. Without a title, you will not be able to find a teacher that can help you advance past one of the 4 basic classes: fighter, rogue, mage, or healer. Note: due to betraying the rebels in the quest The Teachers of Old, if your actions are discovered, Were-Rat Chieftain Kulako's opinion of you will reach the lowest possible value.
Shun Guan crossed the room and stood before him, a warm smile on her face.
Welcome to the Imperium, my heroic villain.
Lucas's character sheet. You may skip to the next chapter. Character name, Lucas. Level, -67. Hit points, 140. Arcane energy, 200. Stamina, 100. Holy energy, class locked. Current class, mage. Stats. Arcanum. Increases arcane energy by 10 per point. 10. Holy. No effect / class locked. 0. Athletics. Increases stamina by 10 per point. 0. Fortitude. Increases hit points by 1% per point. 0. Charisma. 0. Luck. 0. Unspent. 30. Current elemental attunement. None. Combat proficiencies. None. Chapter 2. Lucas eyed the meal in front of him and did his best to ignore the fact that both Shun Guan and the butler were watching his every move, waiting for a reaction. They were seated at a large circular table that was covered with a pristine white tablecloth trimmed in gold and decorated with a candle, and they were currently in the 3rd offering of a 5-course meal. There were 3 slices of toasted sourdough bread on the plate in front of him, and each had been smeared with a layer of goat cheese and then topped with a thin layer of strawberry jam. He never would have thought of the combination himself, whether in the game or at home. After he took the first bite, he lamented the fact that it had never been introduced to him until now.
Lucas,
Shun Guan said pointedly, interrupting his thoughts just as he was reaching to pick up another piece of toast.
you need to focus. We have a lot to do.
Yeah. Fetch quests. I remember you telling me that I needed to do 100 or so different awful things in order to advance from a regular soldier up to nobility. He replied dismissively, brushing off her insistence that he do the tedious run-around quests that characterized the beginning of every MMO. She had already explained to him that it would take him a week to earn the Esquire title, the lowest noble rank needed to be considered better than a basic soldier, if he just followed her game plan. There were no standard military ranks between basic soldiers in the Imperium. Soldiers were soldiers, and the only way to increase one's position above that of average grunt was to gain titles of nobility. That meant that he would have to do everything he could to boost his recognition and quickly rise above the basic soldiers by earning a nobility title.
Don't brush them off as being easy, simple-to-accomplish quests.
Shun Guan insisted.
Even with the resources I'm diverting from my estate's guard fund toward hiring helpers for you, it'll still take quite a while to complete them all. We must endear you to the other local nobles. attend parties, and get them to commit funds to you so that your own personal power can grow. Without taking those steps and proving yourself, you'll never make it up the chain and become an esquire.
Lucas finished chewing his food and then washed it down with wine from the goblet in front of him. He glanced over at the butler and then back to Shunguan. I don't get it. Don't you work at the company? If you work there, then why can't you just alter the code and make me an esquire? Why do I have to do all those boring, time-consuming back-and-forth quests to earn a title?
Because no one can tamper with the game's code. It's set in stone to prevent abuse. Even the development team has to go through 100 different equally annoying bureaucratic hoops every time they're ready to release new content, since they aren't allowed to just code directly into the game. It's a safety mechanism that's designed to prevent a power-hungry GM from abusing his position and doing something insane like removing the log-out button or changing the transparency level of every female's clothes. If it weren't for the fact that the quest line to join the Imperium has always been a hidden in-game quest, one that's condition was to befriend a noble and betray the rebellion, there would have been no guarantee I'd even be able to help you out this much.
Lucas's eyebrows rose as he heard Shunguan's statement. So, you're saying that this is a pre-existing quest? That you didn't make it yourself? Are you trying to tell me that in the 8 real-life years that this game has existed, no one else ever tried to kill the trainers? Not a single person? Not even once?
Well, yes and no,
Shunguan admitted.
This game is built around logical conclusion quests. The AI has a ton of pre-built quests that it generated with the help of developer suggestions, but it also has the ability to continuously create new quests as needed based on player actions, so long as they are within existing in-game parameters. If a particular player or the community as a whole has created an interaction path that doesn't have a quest tied to it, for example, the AI can, and likely will, construct additional quests designed to reward players for their efforts. Quests are malleable that way. You would never know it, but there are hundreds of known quest chains documented in guides on Bluid and other websites that the players themselves encouraged the AI to generate.
Oh. I see. Lucas took another bite of the cheese and jam-covered toast, using the chewing to give himself a moment to process exactly what she was saying.
I watched how most of these quests were triggered. I anticipated how to properly sequence the order of events, and I know how to get the quests to generate the chain that we need to make you into a noble in the Imperium. It's not hard, but it'll take a lot of work. The only other alternative is for you to be stuck as a base-class mage without access to any of the advanced skills.
Lucas took another drink of wine and then said, But I'm not going to do them. I told you when I first agreed to join the Imperium that I wouldn't do anything you asked of me if I didn't agree with it. Shunguan sighed vexedly.
If you don't do it, then you won't ever become a noble.
Her patronizing tone irked Lucas a little, but he knew she was likely only frustrated because all of her hard work was going to be for nothing thanks to his apathy. In the end, he just shrugged. Sorry, but I have a general rule of thumb when it comes to back-and-forth walking quests in video games. I don't do them. I don't care which noble you need me to go suck up to or which materials I need to gather for whom. I'm not going to do it.
Then how do you plan to fulfill your end of the agreement and become a villain if you can't rank up within the Imperium? Without a rank, you'll never be able to collect resources from the serfs, and you won't be able to buy any worthwhile material or gear, so you'll be stuck. The only way you'll be able to grow is through killing players, and then you'll just be another random player killer, nothing helpful to our game's sales.
Well, I guess I'll just have to create a need and generate the quest the old-fashioned way.
Which is?
Shunguan asked, leaning forward anxiously.
How are you going to make a quest better than the ones I put together?
You're forgetting a simple fact. You wanted me to be a villain, right? Well, what does every good villain or boss do at the start of his campaign? Shunguan rolled her eyes impatiently and started listing out some of the more common tropes.
Work on his haircut? Sew a cape together? Find a really dark, damp dungeon to call a lair?
Consolidate his base, Lucas answered flatly. Throughout history, the best and greatest of leaders all started by uniting their people. Before Alexander sieged the Indians at Multan, he started with Thebes and Athens. The first thing Genghis did while rising to power was to unite the Mongol chieftains. If I'm to be the villain you want me to be, then I need to unite the base.
Exactly. Which is why I've detailed out these political quests to help you.
Don, Lady Shunguan, or whatever you go by, Lucas began, unsure of how to call her since he had known her for so long only by her friendly NPC disguise.
Just Shunguan works best,
she answered. Okay. Well, Shunguan, I'm not going to do a ton of boring quests. If I wanted to waste my time doing nothing, I'd go back to that hill and stare at the sky. At least then it wouldn't be both boring and tiresome. Also, there is no way to assure a feudal noble's loyalty. It's better to just lop the heads off this hydra of a political system, eat them, and grow bigger ourselves rather than constantly trying to use someone else's resources.
But that won't work. The nobles will just respawn, and then you'll be left without anything.
Not really a big problem. If the AI works like you say it does, and you can prompt it to create quests based on how you interact with NPCs, then all I need to do is make sure that it spawns the right quests to kill the right people, namely the leaders already in authority.
But players kill those same people all the time. That's exactly what boss encounters are in this game. How will you killing them be any different from another player doing the exact same thing?
Because unlike the other players, I'll be negotiating with the AI differently. I'll be working from the perspective of someone in the Imperium. So, why would the encounters ever be the same? The only thing I need to do now is to find out which one of those nobles is the easiest to pick off. I'll start small and work my way up until I'm king of this noob island. Shunguan's agitated expression didn't fade completely, but it softened a little once she realized that he actually had something resembling a plan.
Well, if you're set on that...
She turned to her butler and said,
Hans, could you fetch the political maps?
The butler in the corner of the room nodded and then silently disappeared from sight.
While he's gone, I am curious. Do you have any plans for how you'll build your character? Are you going to go for the sword-wielding barbarian warlord, putting most of your stats into fortitude and athletics? Or are you going to play as the ranger, focusing on athletics with some points put into fortitude and the remainder into luck? Maybe you'll go paladin, so that you can stay alive through long encounters, making it more fun for the players who are trying to kill you as you keep bouncing back from the verge of death?
Well, I was thinking about something sneaky and cool. A dagger-wielding scout or a double katana ninja. But, sadly, this game doesn't give people starting skills for physical damage classes. Without a proper trainer to teach me how to execute chi attacks, that idea is going to be useless for now.
You should keep in mind that the Imperium does have some of the top trainers. We even have a specialist trainer for the rare Dark Knight category. You would have to split up your stat allocation a fair bit, but that shouldn't be a problem given how many points you'll have. You could invest pretty heavily into Arcanum, Fortitude, Athletics, Holy, Luck, and Charisma.
Lucas brought up his status screen while she was talking about stats and looked over the options. Although he had never made it anywhere in the game, he still had a fairly solid understanding of how most things worked. Athletics, Arcanum, and Holy were associated with 3 different resource pools, stamina, arcane energy, and holy energy respectively, and they were the basis for different types of attack. Physical damage classes, such as fighters, rogues, and archers, relied on stamina for their attacks and thus invested heavily in athletics to increase their stamina pool. Casters relied upon Arcanum to increase their arcane energy pool for casting spells. Likewise, healers relied upon holy energy. Fortitude was the universally needed stat that increased a player's health pool, a boost that was more significant with each level. After those easily trackable stats with definite effects, there were also 2 other stats that no one really knew how to quantify: Charisma and Luck. The players who made themselves into bards knew that Charisma was needed, but no one really knew how much it affected their performance. And if they did, they weren't telling anyone else. Players had tested everything, of course, hoping to find the most efficient builds possible. They had even gone so far as to try putting together data mining teams to nail down exactly how and to what degree Charisma would impact their skills. Unfortunately, results were so varied that, while they could tell where correlations existed, there was never any quantifiable measurement of exactly how or why. Many hypothesized that the stats effects were dependent on the sum of the user's actions and encounters, meaning that it would be nearly impossible to create a perfect control group. Since no two players ever advanced through the game in exactly the same way, it would be impossible to perfectly replicate two gameplay experiences. Even if players followed the same path and took the quests in the same order, there would always be natural differences in their interactions with NPCs. There was also a lot of speculation that luck and charisma had effects that the users simply couldn't track. Some guessed that luck, for example, contributed to much more than a player's crit chance. It was rumored to influence random events, trigger different outcomes from quests, and even produce better rewards from chests. The only thing that anyone knew for certain was that both of these two stats were somehow useful. There was just no clear consensus on exactly what they did or how much was needed. As a result, the only classes that put a significant amount of points into them were those like bards, dancers, thieves, or gamblers, and even they would attribute most of their points to their resource pools. "It's going to have to be magic," Lucas concluded. All spells required a set amount of energy to activate, but a player was limited to channeling only 1% of his total resource pool per second. This meant that a player would naturally channel more energy per second as his energy pool increased, thus casting spells faster. A player with 300 arcane energy, for example, could cast a spell 50% faster than a player with only 200 arcane energy. Since Lucas couldn't learn any actual skills that would take advantage of a larger stamina supply yet, his magic staff would be the only way that he could leverage his growing arcane energy pool and translate it into a form of damage.
Magic is good. Very good, but... oh, it seems that Hans is already back.
Shunguan beckoned the butler to the table, and a moment later, he laid out all the maps. Lucas looked over them, and the first thing he noticed was a big X over the manor they were currently in. In contrast to most estates in the region, which were surrounded by tillable farmland, this estate was enclosed by an almost circular barrier of forest. Shunguan pointed at the smallest house, which lay directly to the northwest.
If you're looking for the weakest nobleman in the Imperium, that is him. His name is Sir Keegan, and he got to where he is through wit and ruthless business practices, not skill in combat. The shrewd man spent all of his money expanding his farmland and building up his army to outrank mine so that he could siege my lands and cut down my woods to grow his territory even more. He wants to usurp my blood right now that he has claimed his role within the Imperium as a knight.
Then why hasn't he? Lucas asked. Is there some mechanic preventing it? For an NPC, you're the lowest there is. Killing you is a cakewalk, even for starting players. She pointed to the much larger castle directly north of her place.
Because of this guy, Dre von Maidbanger. He is the one currently keeping me safe. He is the opposite of Keegan, a battle-hardened, bloodthirsty noble who jumps at any chance to kill men. The only thing the two have in common is they both covet my place. Dre thinks he can win my hand in marriage, and Keegan just wants to kill me off altogether. Dre's army prevents Keegan from attacking me, and his pride prevents him from forcing the issue of marriage upon me. As long as he is here, Keegan remains static, biding his time until his army surpasses Dre's.
So, it's safe to say that these two aren't on very good terms with one another, Lucas concluded. Dre, perhaps, is looking for an excuse to murder Keegan, too.
He wants an excuse to kill any man who isn't immediate family. His surname, von Maidbanger, wasn't his family's original name. The second king of the Imperium gave that title to one of Dre's ancestors after 11 kids were born into his house at the same time. Generation after generation, the apple has never fallen far from the tree. The men in his family have never seen other men as anything more than competition. People getting between them and maids.
Lucas laughed, shaking his head at how ridiculous the Maidbanger family history was. Sounds like an upstanding chap. There's no chance he is a higher rank than Keegan, is there? I know I'm taking a stab in the dark, but since he has a fort and not a manor, he should be a higher rank, right?
Barely,
Shunguan admitted.
He's only a baron, one step above my rank of lady, but he is the highest-ranking Imperium noble within the territory here on the island.
Lucas scratched at his chin, taking in all of the information he had just been given. Then I guess all that's left for me to do is to fabricate a reason for the walking nobleman cliché to give me a quest to take over Keegan's estate.
You know that he's not going to be as easy to kill as I would have been, and while you might have been able to clear my dungeon without much effort, you would have had a tough time defeating me and my attendants in open combat. His guards make mine look like children learning to swing a sword for the first time,
She grumbled, hitting the table with her hand.
But tell me, how exactly do you plan to beat him, even if you get the Baron's permission to take his stuff?
Lucas had only been thinking about how to generate the quest, but now that he was faced with the issue, he had to figure out how to follow through with it. Unfortunately, the game was designed so that most experience was gained from killing Imperium troops early on. Since he couldn't actually off them randomly without jeopardizing his objective, he would have to think of a different way to get around this problem. He could grind levels by killing the bears and wolves that were local to the area, but that would be slow and taxing.
I can probably afford one semi-decent guard for you if I repurpose the funds that I used to spend on generating 2 NPC guards for my boss room, but I don't think it would be worth the cost. You need to find a way to kill Keegan, or we can just go back to my original plan. It's never too late to try diplomacy. You know, the non-violent method of settling problems.
Lucas sighed. The idea of diplomacy bored him to no end, and it always had. Even before the accident, back when he had still been a hard-working member of society who properly contributed to the world like a good little worker bee, he hadn't been able to stand listening to people talk in boardrooms. No, I need to do this the right way. As I mentioned before, the Alliance can't be shaky, he insisted.
What's wrong? Why that face?
She asked.
Is it Yu Hua again?
Lucas slammed his fist on the table.
I don't know who told you that name, but I don't want to hear it ever again out of your mouth while you're using that avatar,
he roared. Shun Guan raised her hands up as if she were surrendering.
Sorry. Didn't mean to upset you. Just...
She looked over at the butler and signaled for him to put away the dagger he had pulled out.
You mentioned that name more than once while you were asleep in the fields, and you always had that same strange look on your face when you did.
Lucas managed to calm himself down again when he heard her explanation. His anger had left him with a good bit of adrenaline coursing through his system, which stopped him from thinking clearly. It's fine, he said flatly. Realizing this meeting would no longer be productive, he grabbed the plate of food in front of him and stood up. I'm going for a walk. He strode out of the dining room, making sure to grab the backpack that he had left by the door on the way out.
I said I'm sorry.
He heard Shun Guan mumble as he shut the door behind him.
You don't have to be that way.
Lucas had converted real-life money into in-game currency and bought out a nice room at the inn in town for the next 3 months of game time, so he set off in that direction. On his walk back, he kept kicking around ideas for how he could possibly get through to Keegan without causing too much trouble. Then his thoughts were interrupted by a loud shout.
Negative! I knew that I'd find you if I was patient,
Nick shouted.
You ruined what should have been the easiest quest there was and took my starting staff!
Lucas couldn't help but chuckle. I was in there almost 2 hours, long enough to have 3 courses of a nice meal. How long were you waiting for me on the road back to town? He asked.
Nick grinned. Long enough to catch you out here? The others had to log for the day because of real-life issues, but that doesn't mean you're going to get away with what you did. I'm going to make you pay for stealing my weapon and ending that quest early.
The dungeon can be soloed. Why didn't you just do it again? Lucas asked, looking at the sword Nick was holding in his left hand and wondering if he was going to use it. Lucas hadn't planned on fighting anything, and he had purposefully chosen a path that would lead him to town without having to worry about encountering any wolves, bears, 5-foot-wide crabs, or 3-foot-long rats, so he hadn't even equipped a weapon to defend himself with. There was some distance between the 2 men, but Lucas knew that arming himself would be a gamble that came down to whether or not he could pull out a weapon before being struck down. He also had no way to know whether he'd be able to beat Nick even if he got a weapon out in time. Why bother waiting for me with a sword in hand? Lucas asked. Haven't you wasted a lot more time waiting on me to come out of the manor than it would take for you to just retry the quest?
I can't, Nick huffed. Don't you think I would have done it again if I could? Stupid garbage game only gives you one stupid freaking garbage staff, and mine dropped when you killed me!
Lucas blinked. He hadn't expected this outcome. He's actually a new player. He's too poor to buy a weapon back, and his friends aren't online, so he can't borrow theirs during the weapon switch phases. So, what? You thought you could kill me and take back the staff you lost if you waited out here? You know, even if you kill me, there is a much higher chance I'll drop something besides your staff, right? Even flagged for PvP, which meant that he would most likely drop 2 items when he died, he had a ton of other equipment on him aside from just the 2 staves that he was carrying. The odds of him dropping the exact right combination of items that Nick wanted was extremely slim, and if he managed to pull out both staves, it'd also prevent them from dropping altogether. The game made it so that anything on a player was fair game when it came to loot drops when he died, except the weapons they were using. Theoretically, if one went around stark naked with only their weapons in hand and no money on them, they'd lose nothing but experience when they died. Nick's beady eyes narrowed as he stared at Lucas.
I know. That's why I haven't killed you yet. Just hand over the staff and the coppers that dropped, and I'll let this slide. You'll be killed by some other player on the way to town.
You know, this spiky-haired weirdo is incredibly annoying. But he actually has a point. Talking with people in town is not only going to be tedious, but it's also going to be risky. Not to mention that trying to convince someone to do a good deed and help me out will be even tougher with the red PvP-tagged name.
Look, stop stalling and hand over that garbage beginner staff, you dirty, mayonnaise-mouthed, muffin-munching milkman!
Nick shouted. Lucas didn't bother stopping himself from laughing out loud this time. He knew he shouldn't be taking pot shots, especially since he was completely in the wrong. But Nick's red face and insistence on speaking like a teenager who had just been grounded was amusing.
Relax,
he said, reaching toward his coin purse. He couldn't help but think about how fortuitous this encounter actually was. He had a problem with no solution, and here a solution appeared before him in the form of an angry, whiny, annoying little man. You said you need a staff, which means you don't even have the 5 silver needed to buy one, right? Nick's eyes left Lucas's coin purse and remained glued to the 2 gold coins he slowly took out. Nick closed his agape mouth and nodded, watching Lucas's face.
Yeah,
he answered, his eyes still occasionally flickering back to the coins. Which means that, unlike me, you don't have money in real life. You probably don't even have a job. Don't be worried. You can be honest with me. He took another shiny gold coin out of his purse and held it out in his hand. You did me a favor by letting me kill you back there. You clearly could have won if you fought back properly, so it's only right I return the favor. He hoped that, by throwing out a small compliment, it would help soothe the man's wounded ego. Nick ground his teeth.
You think you could buy me off just 'cause I'm poor? Just 'cause I don't have spare money to drop into games, you think you're better than me?
Lucas looked down at his coin purse, withdrew a 4th gold coin, and then dropped all 4 back into the purse and out of sight. You know what? You're right. This was rude and insensitive. I'll just give you the staff you want and be on my way. Nick was either going to be as pliable or as durable as steel, and Lucas figured that it was about a 50-50 shot at the moment as to which way it would go. He had seen people go both ways in similar situations, so he decided to pull in his proverbial fishing line by threatening to take away the money and see if the fish had taken the bait.
Wait!
Nick cried, sticking out a hand.
You might not be able to buy me, but you do owe me. I didn't just lose that staff. I lost time and experience, too.
Lucas shook his head, doing his best not to smile as he reached into his bag and pulled out a magic staff. He felt much better now that he was armed. Given the distance between them, Lucas had full confidence that he would be able to kite away from Nick before the man was ever able to close the gap. Given how much damage the early game spells did, there was no way he would lose an engagement with someone swinging a sword. You're right. Lucas charged a spell and then stopped just before it completed to make sure Nick could see that he now had the upper hand. I do owe you.
Hey, easy there!
Nick called cautiously.
I just want what's mine, and then I'll be on my way.
Lucas sneered as he reached into his coin purse and took out 3 gold coins. It wasn't much in terms of in-game currency. In fact, outside of the beginner zone, it wouldn't even buy a single night's stay at some of the nicer hotels, much less proper gear. Regardless, Nick's eyes lit up, and he let out a sigh of relief when he caught the coins.
Thanks. Now I'm getting out of here before—
Wait! Lucas raised a hand, stopping Nick. Don't leave just yet. I need something from you first.
I don't care what you need. I'm done. You've already cost me enough time, and that's all I've got. Stupid freaking garbage PKer.
Nick practically spat the words. Whatever tact and diplomacy he had exhibited moments ago were now gone.
I'm out, and I hope I don't have to see your backstabbing turncoat face again.
I'll pay, Lucas said. Nick turned and stood frozen in place, grinding his teeth as he stared at Lucas. After a moment of silence, he finally relented.
How much?
A plat. And it shouldn't take long, Lucas said. Plat was short for platinum coin. They were only a quarter of the size of gold coins, yet they were exchanged at a ratio of 10 gold coins per single platinum. Nick sighed.
God, you're such a plate of spotted dick. Well, fine. Fine. I'll do your stupid freaking favor, but don't think this means I've forgiven you or that we're friends. I still don't know what kind of man thinks it's cool to stab his teammates in the back over an NPC during a boss fight. That's just low.
It was a secret quest, Lucas admitted, hoping it would tempt the prideful man. One that unlocked a special racial quest chain only available to humans.
Huh?
Nick looked a little stunned.
That doesn't make sense. Humans are supposed to only have a single racial quest line, Redemption of the Fallen People, and that's not until the final island. They don't have a noob island quest chain.
Ah, so then, it must have been my imagination that I unlocked a way to join the Imperium and gain access to unique trainers and classes. Like Dark Knight.
Dark Knight?
Nick's eyes turned to saucers at the mention of that name.
But that class is only supposed to be available after you finish the necessary Sinner's quest line for the Paladin Order. That's a level 90, nearly end-game quest,
he said, clearly showing that this was a class he had seriously researched on Blewett. Yeah, Lucas said, a class I'm sure you, a mighty spell staff in the making, have no interest in attaining.
What? No, of course I—
Nick paused and gulped down whatever saliva was in his mouth.
Of course, I would be okay with playing the Dark Knight early, but it's impossible. You have to be a much higher level, and only a few people have ever finished that stupid escort quest without the NPC dying and killing their chances at it.
Well, for that class, Lucas smiled and continued dangling the carrot in front of Nick. Do you think you could do me a favor? Think of the money as just a bonus. If I finish all my quests, we'll be able to access the trainer. Nick's eyes narrowed, and his confusion vanished.
What's your game, Negative? Why are you doing this? What is the quest line you're doing?
I need you to find me a mercenary, preferably 2 at the very least, that hasn't killed Shunguan yet. But the problem is that it's just as you said earlier. I'm marked as a PKer. If I go to the starting town like this, a group of players might take advantage of my tag and kill me on sight.
Really? You want me to talk to people and put together your stupid group? Are you at least planning to pay them too?
Lucas nodded. Yeah, I'll throw you 5 gold coins for each person you bring. You can give them less than the 5 I'll give you if they'll take it, but make sure they're human. This is a racial quest.
What's the quest? I can't get people to join if I don't tell them first what we're planning to do.
We're going to kill Sir Keegan.
Okay, I'll go get some people, but where are we gonna meet?
Nick asked. His tone was terse, but Lucas could tell that the idea of money, a rare class, and a unique quest had caught his attention. Actually, Lucas paused and considered how tough the fight with Keegan might be. You'll need to finish your side of the quest first, join the Imperium, and then meet up with me. So go ahead and take care of that. Just follow Shunguan's instructions and then find some players and meet me in the village just outside of Keegan's manor. I'm going to go there ahead of you and do some reconnaissance.
Got it,
Nick answered, turning and walking back toward town.
Just don't forget to bring my plat.
Wait, Lucas shouted, stopping him once more.
What is it now? Nick asked vexedly.
You forgot your staff. Lucas tossed over the one he already held in his hand and then withdrew his second from his bag. It wasn't that he didn't trust Nick not to kill him now. The greed in the man's eyes was as clear as day. But with the PK status effect, he didn't want to chance someone else finishing him off. After encountering Nick on the road back, he was now feeling extra wary. Some villain I am. Lucas shook his head, chastising himself as he changed his direction and headed north-northwest. I can't even walk down the road without having to buy my way out of trouble. Lucas reached Borken, the town near Keegan's manor, after a short walk, and he wasn't surprised at all to find exactly how empty the village was. Without players coming in and out of it constantly, like starting towns or establishments housing important and frequented quests, this particular location was void of any foot traffic. While this was a good thing for Lucas since he still had his PvP tag on, it meant that the area had a rather somber, quiet, and somewhat depressing atmosphere. A few of the shopkeepers looked at him with greedy eyes, but all of the other NPCs in the area just walked around with their heads down and eyes glued to the ground, shuffling along as if they were prisoners with their ankles bound together by shackles. The only people who didn't appear to be distraught were the soldiers. Clad in shiny chainmail armor and metal helmets, they were seemingly oblivious to the bleak mood. A few of them walked around on patrol, clutching their halberds tightly and laughing and joking with each other. Lucas had expected to see this. It was how the game was designed. The gloomy mood was meant to evoke sympathy from the player and help drive the black and white, their evil and we're good narrative that the game thrived on. So boring. So predictable. They might as well throw in a few cheerleaders for the hero to protect in order to save the world. Although, I guess I should be glad that this game at least lets us kill NPCs and hasn't gone the full us versus them route yet. It's not as bad as those games that limit freedom and try to keep all adult activities ranging from killing to romance at or below a rated R level. Lucas never had been able to understand those games that wouldn't even show blood when someone was stabbed. A game without fully explorable love interests, dragon slaying, and castle conquering lacked the basic fundamentals of what a fantasy game was supposed to be. Lucas made his way to the small town's tavern, and he was promptly greeted by its owner, a tall yet frail-looking Alfar man who looked as if he had seen more wear and tear than the ragged decor of his aging establishment. The aging man rushed to open the door before Lucas could make his way inside.
Good day,
he gushed with all the propriety of a man who smelled money.
How can I assist a proud member of Imperium today? All Imperium soldiers eat half off. Compliments of Sir Keegan.
Lucas was pleasantly surprised at the new dialogue prompt, and his eyes lit up. Every tavern owner, even those who only appeared during special events, would always say the same thing when a player approached. "Hail, adventurer! Welcome to our humble establishment." Their chat was so common and so perfectly scripted that people had created a series of memes around it. "What do you have to eat?" he asked. He was keenly attentive as he waited to see if the man would revert back to the usual dialogue tree or remain off course.
We have very little, sir. Only meager amounts of anything that would be deemed worthy of being tasted by an Imperium soldier. But I will do what I can to appease your appetites.
The owner gestured toward an empty table with one hand while holding the door open with the other. "I see," Lucas replied, along with a curt nod. It is indeed a whole new train of dialogue. He should have just listed off the specials for the day, smiled, and then said whether or not he had space to accommodate my party. I guess this is the result of my siding with the Imperium. Lucas entered the tavern and saw that 3 tables were filled with non-humans, each set up by a different wall. The patrons were mostly Alfars and Beastmen, along with a few beardless dwarves mixed in as well. They were all eating quietly, taking small scoops of the slop in front of them with their spoons before quickly washing it down with another sip of their drink. The conditions for these people must be horrid, Lucas thought as his eyes roamed from table to table. There's not even a single piece of bread between 3 tables to give the gruel even a modicum of texture. After following Lucas's gaze, the owner once more gestured toward an empty table.
If you'll take a seat, sir, I'll have the serving wench come by and take your order in a moment. If you'd be so kind.
He gestured yet again when Lucas refused to move toward the vacant seat. I think I see a much better seat, Lucas said. He put on his fake smile and walked over to the cornermost table, which was almost entirely filled by 4 alfars, 2 were-rats, 2 were-bears, and a dwarf. I think this one suits my needs fine.
But, Mr.
The tavern keeper pleaded. He reached out to grab Lucas's arm, only for it to be retracted at the last second before he could make contact. He wrung his hands together in front of him, unsure of how to stop Lucas from sitting without touching him. The group of non-humans just looked up at Lucas like he was a meteor that had fallen from the sky, completely alien and foreign to their understanding.
Mister, if you'd be so kind as to leave these gentlemen to their conversation, I'll make sure the first round of beer is on the house,
the tavern owner begged. I don't think I'm interrupting a conversation, though, Lucas answered. They weren't talking at all when I sat down. Or... Lucas looked at the group. Were you? Am I rudely barging in on a discussion? All of them but the dwarf and 2 werebears shook their heads. The werebears just stared at Lucas for a moment longer before picking their drinks back up and each taking a long, exaggerated sip at the same time. See, Mr. I don't think I actually caught your name, Lucas said.
Herman,
the tavern owner answered. Ah, well, as you can see, Herman, none of them were talking about anything. Your worries are unfounded.
I was,
the dwarf interjected, finally breaking the group's silence.
I was talking before you came over and started making a racket.
Oh. Lucas turned and looked at the short man. Sorry then. Do carry on.
It's a private matter,
the dwarf said.
Not for strangers.
Lucas hesitated, but the small smile never left his face. He knew that how he played this next part would be very important. Shunguan had told him clearly that the right conditions could create quests, and that was exactly what he needed to happen if he was going to succeed. If all the NPCs in the region ended up hating him, then he wasn't sure what type of quests he'd be able to generate, if any at all. For all he knew, he might very well end up in a situation where there was no way to take over Keegan's position, so the next few words would be crucial. Maybe... Lucas brought up his character HUD and looked over at his unspent stat points, noting that he still had 30 left over. Maybe I should try to make sure the odds are stacked in my favor. Normally, like all players, he would just completely ignore charisma altogether. Considering the fact that he would have far more points than other players, and how he was taking an uncharted route to nobility, however, he couldn't help but think that this was a now-or-never moment. He quickly dumped the remaining 30 stat points into charisma, and he could have sworn that one of the were-rats stopped frowning at him as soon as he allocated the points. Well, Lucas began, having decided on his angle of verbal attack. He pointedly looked down at the dwarf and asked, I don't think you can be strangers with a man that you've shared bread and drinks with, can you? The dwarf scratched his chin for a moment.
I suppose that'd depend on whether that drink was water or ale,
he answered back, causing Lucas to laugh even as the rest of the group remained stoically quiet. I think it'd have to be ale. What do you say, Herman? Do you have enough ale and bread for the table? Herman's previous frown deepened as he gulped back whatever emotions had been caught in his throat before finally nodding his head.
Yes, but, mister, I really think you shouldn't. You should just... Mister, please.
Herman continued stumbling over his words, but the dwarf cut him off.
He said to bring out the ale, Herm, and I suggest you do it. But what if one of the other soldiers... Bring the ale, Herm, the dwarf repeated sternly. I ain't drinking this lukewarm water when there is an offer of something sweeter, so get moving.
Make it 2, Lucas added, feeling the dwarf's anger from where he was. Herman sighed in frustration, but he quickly left and returned less than a minute later with 2 giant glass pitchers of frothy ale and an empty frosted mug that he set down in front of Lucas. An Alfar girl about Lucas's age followed along behind him, carrying 3 plates of freshly baked bread. The dwarf dumped the remainder of the water in his cup out on the floor, reached out and grabbed one of the 2 pitchers the moment they touched the table, and quickly refilled his cup with some of the ale. Lucas didn't even have enough time to grab the handle of the other pitcher before the dwarf had already downed the entire measure. He let out a loud, satisfied, "Ah," as he leaned back in his chair and patted his belly. "That's the stuff," he said. "I haven't had a good frosty one since last year's winter festival." Rather pleased with the way the conversation was going, Lucas had to fake a forlorn expression as he grabbed the pitcher. "That can't be. That's too shameful to even think about. I thought you lot were honest, hard-working people doing good for the kingdom. How could it be that you haven't been able to enjoy beer on your breaks?" he asked. The were-rat next to Lucas grabbed the pitcher right out of his hands and then gestured to Lucas's cup with a nod. "Let me." "Ah, right. I forgot the manners here," Lucas thought as he watched the rat fill his 20-ounce mug. "You can't pour your own drink if you're eating with those of a lower class. This never comes up for other players, as the equality-related missions prevent most players from ever being a higher class than those whom they're eating and drinking with." "It can be indeed, for water is cheaper than ale, and our pay is smaller than Fiddle's spine," the dwarf answered, clearly referring to the were-rat pouring Lucas's drink as Fiddle. "I see. That's a tragedy. How come you're getting paid so little? Doesn't this region produce a lot of food and make money for the Imperium?" "We produce enough goods for 3 regions," the dwarf huffed. He filled another mug of ale for himself, and the others finally followed suit. "We do all the labor, but that copper-clinging miser keeps all the rewards and pays us less and less each year. It's a dang crying shame, and I don't care what the laws say about bad-mouthing nobility. I'm saying it."
In front of a soldier,
one of the 2 werebears said with a shake of his head.
"In front of a friend,"
the dwarf corrected.
"After all, what soldier? Name a wind-up toy tin can that would dress like he does, wearing such cheap armour and going around buying subs drinks? He ain't your average soldier, and I don't think he'll report us. The boost in pay wouldn't cover all this fine beverage."
How expensive were the ales? Lucas suddenly wondered. He wasn't exactly hurting for cash, but he definitely wasn't eager to shell out a ton on a single quest if he didn't have to. Lucas sighed. "Well, actually, I am a soldier, but..." He paused dramatically and considered how to phrase the next part. "Well, I just can't stand it either. Not seeing that food in front of you. I don't think I could eat it if someone paid me, much less pay for the privilege with hours of hard work."
"See?" the dwarf exclaimed. "A friend."
"I'm Lucas," he replied, holding out his drink.
"Gunter,"
the dwarf offered, clinking his mug against Lucas's.
"Good to meet you."
"Well, Gunter, is there any way to help? I mean, surely there has to be someone you can appeal to. What about Dre?"
"You mean that deviant pervert to the east?" Gunter asked. "I wish. What do you think he would do about it for us? There is no way he'd listen to one of us subs. Not unless we were tattling on Keegan for holding back money. Unfortunately, that guy pays his tributes and taxes perfectly. I'd know."
"You'd know?" Lucas was now very, very curious. Did I just hit a jackpot? My luck stat is still 0, right? Don't tell me this dwarf knows where Keegan's financials are.
"Yeah, I'd know,"
Gunter grunted.
"Me old friend, Jason, thought that the copper clinger had to be embezzling, so he told that to Dre as if it were a fact hand chiselled into stone last year after Keegan cut wages yet again. He made sure to dress up a fancy story about how Keegan was hiding books and keeping money. Everything he could think of. Damn shame was that when Dre came to investigate the accusation, it all turned up as lies. Dre spent an entire week trying to find a single piece of dirt on the money hoarder, and when he couldn't, he took out his frustrations on me friend."
"I'm sorry for your loss," Lucas said, hanging his head low for a moment of silence.
"Hey, Don't go cursing Jason to death, Gunter quickly said. He ain't dead yet.
He isn't.
You think Dre would let him off that easy? No, he's rotting in a prison cell and will be forever unless evidence of Keegan embezzling magically appears out of thin air. And a fat chance at that.
Lucas didn't know what to say. He had already made his decision to journey firmly into the Imperium's dark side in order to help Shun Guan with her evil villain plan. But there in front of him sat a quest asking him to do the exact opposite.
Quest, the truthfully accused. With certainty, morality, and justice on his side, Jason begged, scraped, and pleaded until he gained an audience with the great warrior of Hesse. Unfortunately, while he wielded many virtues, determination and patience among them, he did not wield truth. His hopes and dreams were built on a bed of lies, and as the bed fell apart underneath him, and his schemes were revealed, he awoke to a cruel fate in a cold dungeon. Now, his friend Gunther has come to you with what pride he has left to seek your help. Break into Dre's prison and free the brave Jason from his chains. Warning, your level is too low to attempt this quest. Completion will result in much greater rewards due to the difficulty, but undertaking the challenge is not advised. Please note that the suggested level for this quest is 30.
Come to me with his pride seeking help? Lucas thought as he saw the description for the skill. No, he hasn't. He was just complaining. This is worse than when you select a conversation option to say something like, "Nice day," and the game has your character start cussing out the other person instead. This is not what I wanted, Lucas grumbled. He had been hoping to generate a quest related to Keegan, and instead, one popped up that was so difficult the game recommended he be at the maximum level allowed in the starter area before attempting it.
You don't have to worry, the dwarf grumbled. I ain't expecting miracles from some common tin can. Just complaining for the sake of complaining. Don't mind me.
Lucas shook his head. No, you're right to complain. We all know our lot in life, after all. I know mine. I work every day, fight for my country, and still barely get enough for some beer, bread, and bacon.
Right. If you're fighting on the front lines for those no-good jerks, least they could do is give you some respect, Gunter said.
You should be careful of your tone,
the larger of the two werebears growled. He was clearly unhappy with how the conversation was going.
He could just as easily wag his tongue to his superiors in the Imperium as he can to us. You should be careful how you speak.
Ash, you're too paranoid.
Gunter laughed, reaching out and grabbing the pitcher to refill his mug. Lucas was amazed at how the little dwarf had managed to begin his third glass while the others were still working on their first, but he had to hand it to him. The man was determined.
You need to lighten up. Who the heck is going to care what a bunch of subs in a sub-owned tavern in the middle of that loser Keegan's territory are doing? What's he going to get reporting us?
Fun,
Ash said.
You know how their kind are. They like to bully us for kicks.
If that's all he wanted, he could have just as easily lied and said that we talked badly of that maid-banger or Keegan and saved himself the coins he spent on the beer,
Gunter countered.
Wouldn't be the first time one of the highbrows lied for kicks about something us subs did.
Lucas pondered what Gunter had said. Wait, how did they know that Keegan was telling the truth? I mean, when they locked up Jason. Gunter shot Lucas a look.
Oh, that's easy. They just checked his accounting books. Apparently, the numbers matched the few contracts that they found too, so they couldn't have lied.
Lucas couldn't help but grin when he heard that. He finally had an idea for how to fix his Keegan problem and acquire some land. Now, the only thing he needed to do was wait for Nick to come in with backup. And here I thought that it was going to be a worthless quest when I first saw it. So, all we really need to do is prove Jason's innocence to help him get free, he mumbled.
Stop worrying yourself about sub-problems,
Ash said.
We can handle ourselves. We have for generations. You don't need to mind us.
Lucas understood immediately what Ash was saying. There was going to be no help from them. The subs as they apparently called themselves despite how degrading the title was, wouldn't lift a finger to assist him with this Keegan issue, even though it was their fate that hung in the balance. This didn't surprise Lucas in the least. History was riddled with examples of feudal towns filled with beaten and belittled serfs who never once rebelled against changing colors and shifting princes as conquerors gained and lost territory from Brittany to Napoli. People didn't want to rock the boat if they were used to the abuse. That's just how life was for them. It was exactly how Arab states such as Morocco had maintained the same ruling family for such long periods of time, despite varying degrees of civility or cruelty from their monarchs. The people were simply accustomed to the situation, and any other system was simply unfathomable for them.
Ignore him. If you're storming in to save Jason, count me among your ranks. I'll do what it takes to help the bugger out. I owe him,
Gunter said, finishing his third mug of ale.
Although, I'll need more of this if I'm going to have to put up with a tin can as an ally.
Tin can must be their slang word for Imperium soldiers. No worries. I'll be needing a few just to deal with your breath, Lucas replied with a laugh. He tried to match the tone, but he could tell from the half-hearted laugh that was shot back at him that he hadn't done a good job. It wasn't something he could help, though, since he wasn't a naturally charismatic person. Charisma, likability, smooth talking, that had always been Yu Hua's territory. He knew all the theories and had read all the books, but when it came to putting theory into practice, he never would have made it past the first board meeting without her back in the day, much less won over a single investor. Yu Hua. Lucas tripped over the name and tried to force down the emotions swelling up inside of him that his awkward fumble threatened to bring to the surface. His memory automatically worked unbidden to recall the woman who had been dead for almost 8 months of real-life time. He felt like he was forgetting the small details every time she came to mind, whether it was the way she would wrinkle her nose when she was annoyed, the way she would bite her lip when she was lost in thought, or the smile she wore as she jumped up in excitement after they landed their first angel investor.
What's wrong with him?
Gunter asked loudly enough to interrupt Lucas's thoughts.
He went quiet.
He waved his free hand back and forth in front of Lucas's eyes to gather his attention.
It's probably having to listen to a loud drunk ramble on,
Fiddle answered. Ash pushed himself back from the table, stood up, and drained the last of his ale.
Whatever it is, let's just leave him to his thoughts. Our break time is over, and the boss is going to want us back in the field soon.
Then, turning to Lucas, he added,
And whether I'm right or wrong about you, thanks for the drink.
Here, here,
Gunter cheered. He slammed his empty mug on the table before grabbing his meal and walking off. As if on cue, every non-human in the tavern rose and filed out one at a time, leaving Lucas alone with only his thoughts and what was left of the 2 pitchers of virtual alcohol remaining. A minute or two after the tavern had been emptied of its patrons, the serving girl who had brought Lucas his bread earlier and Herman came to the table and began clearing away all the empty plates, dishes, and mugs. After she was done, Herman returned with a smile on his face and a much more confident disposition than the one he had been wearing when Lucas first entered the establishment.
Mr. Lucas, you won't be requiring any additional services, will you?
He asked.
We don't have many more foods than bread to offer, but we do have wines, an assortment of spirits, and—
Cheese? Lucas asked. He had already discovered that the bland bread was unsatisfying to munch on. And maybe a dry wine?
Right away, sir.
Herman excused himself for a moment and then returned with a block of Emmental cheese and a bottle of red wine. It wasn't as good as the vintages that Lucas normally bought at the starting town. It was quite bitter due to a high level of tannins, but was also overly sweet and had both black pepper and bell pepper flavors mixed together. All the same, it still went down well enough with the cheese. After an hour and a half of waiting and munching on the cheese as Herman and the serving girl awkwardly stared at him in silence from behind the bar, Lucas was beginning to want to take a nap. He was tired of the day, of people, of the memories that had been brought up, and of the mediocre cheese and novelty flavors that the local winery had produced in its evident effort to use up the region's leftover fruits. He was about to give up on waiting for Nick. and was starting to believe that the man's pride had finally won out over his greed and ambition and that he had ditched Lucas to find something else to do, when the boisterous man practically kicked the door in as he barged through the entrance.
I made it!
Nick proclaimed.
That pompous bastard better not have ditched... Ah, there you are. I was worried I was late.
You are, Lucas said, gesturing to an empty seat at his table with his eyes. And empty-handed, I see.
I'm not empty-handed,
Nick argued as a slightly curvy woman with a medium build walked through the door behind him. She was covered in leather and had random weapons strapped to her with custom-made leather sheaths. With the buckles from her weapon holders, the black leather pants and boots, the loose-fitting blue shirt that seemed to always be almost showing more cleavage than would be appropriate in a PG environment, she looked much like a swashbuckling pirate.
This is the bastard who killed you in the middle of a quest?
The woman asked loudly as soon as she walked in the door.
The one that blew you and your friends away like a kite in a hurricane?
Yeah, he's the one,
Nick answered.
You telling me this is the two-timing backstabber that gutted you like a hooked fish for a lousy quest and a pretty girl?
She asked, seeking clarification once more.
Yeah, that's the one,
Nick said, making Lucas a little nervous. Did he bring her here to help him kill me? Lucas tried to stealthily move his hand toward the backpack that he had dropped next to his chair.
That's great,
she said.
That's great. Man, it's good to meet you, boss. I wish I could have been there to watch you kill this mile-an-hour mouth of a bastard. Hell, I'd have even done it half price.
The woman laughed heartily, slapping Nick on the back.
No offense, little man.
How is that not offensive? I'm bigger than you,
Nick retorted.
Not where it counts,
she said, patting her coin purse.
And I'm betting boss here is more of a man by that measure too, aren't you, boss?
Lucas took in a deep breath, unsure of how he felt now that another loud, high-energy person had appeared. I got enough to pay you fairly if you do the work, he responded, not wanting to tell her exactly how much he had.
That's all that matters,
she said, walking over and shooting out her hand.
Name's Bonnie, and for a price, I'm all yours.
As a mercenary, she means,
Nick clarified for her.
Only one I could find that was still in the starting town. I tried to find a few more, but she's all that was left.
Mercenary? I'm whatever he can afford me to be.
She clinched Lucas's hand tighter and gave him a wink.
Whatever you can afford,
she added in a quieter, more sultry tone. A fit female body with all the right curves in all the right places was always going to be attractive to Lucas. But he couldn't ignore the furry red ears poking out from behind her matching red hair. A fox girl? Lucas said.
Yeah, only way you can upgrade to the silver-tailed werefox,
Bonnie said, explaining her choice. You do realize I'm with the Imperium, and this quest is going to be for the Imperium, right?
Yeah, the generic cookie-cutter spell staff explained it as he was running his mouth. But he said you paid and didn't mind that I just started. So what of it? You need me to wear a collar and leash, act all meek, and call you master around your superiors so that you don't lose the quest? 'Cause I'll do it if you're paying. I'll even throw in a meow.
I don't think that'll be necessary exactly, Lucas said, though the image of her with a collar and leash on did flash through his head as she mentioned it. But if you don't mind making yourself seen and not heard around the nobles, we should be good. Bonnie grinned.
Har, har. Whatever you say, but personally, I think it's more fun to just use Old Faithful.
She pulled out a knife that was strapped to her thigh.
To make sure the nobles don't show up or talk again.
She looked down at the blade for a second before resheathing it as quickly as she had drawn it.
But killing a noble is extra, even if I like it.
Have you killed a noble before? I mean, just to get a feel for the price, Lucas asked, somewhat drawn by her bravado.
Well, you see, that is...
Her confidence immediately seemed to crack.
That is... Well, no one has been able to afford me yet,
she finally admitted.
But if you got a noble you don't like in mind, we can always make a deal.
I just might, Lucas said. He did, after all, need to have someone killed. The problem was that he couldn't kill the noble yet. But rather than focusing on the person I have for you to kill, Lucas paused to fetch a blank, rolled-up piece of paper. Let's focus on what I need to fill. Nick looked down at the piece of paper. You want her to write you poetry?
You're gonna have to pay out a lot more than the price to kill a noble if you're asking me to model for you,
Bonnie said.
I wouldn't even let my future Clyde do that for cheap.
Lucas wanted to smack the two for their weird ideas. Not you. I need to draw Keegan's mansion. We need intel, and we need to find his documents, too. We're going to have to go in twice, so I want as much information as possible to make it smooth. So, you're not paying us to just do a map, are you? Nick asked. You're wanting us to kill a bunch of people and mark where they'll spawn?
Oh, recon, murder, intrigue, and theft. This is definitely a job for Bonnie. I'll show you here, boss. You won't find a better crew than one with me in it.
Murder? Nick looked at Bonnie quizzically. Wait. Yeah, murder. Can you actually join us to help in the mission, or are we going to have to solo it? Lucas looked over at Nick. What do you mean? Well, aren't you part of the Imperium now? If you get caught murder hoboing your way through an Imperium fortress, isn't that going to kill your standing with your own faction? Nick asked. Lucas nodded. I'm not at a high enough rank within the Imperium to just kill my way through without permission, which means we just have to make sure there are no survivors to report the issue. Like in most stealth-based games, as long as you eliminated enemies before they could report anything, there was no way for people to know you were guilty of a crime. It was one of the game mechanics that Lucas actually enjoyed, and he felt that it gave most players a lot more freedom than they realized. It was also how Lucas was able to talk with the other races amicably, since none of them knew that he had betrayed the rebellion and murdered their 4 sage teachers while they were locked away in a cage. He knew for certain that, no matter how far the distance was between Shunguan's manor and the tavern, Gunter wouldn't have talked to him at all if an enemy NPC had been alive to report him. The dwarf might have even spat on him for betraying the non-humans or, in the best-case scenario, although rare, tried to generate a quest that would have allowed Lucas to redeem himself. Should be easier said than done, Nick said. This manor isn't like Shunguan's. There isn't a known secret entrance that will lead us to our destination like— There isn't? Lucas looked over at him, an eyebrow raised. There should be, right? I'm pretty sure that nearly every manor on this island that players have attacked, even Dre von Maidbangers, has had an entrance that has let players bypass the front door. We just need to find it. Nick groaned. I mean, I suppose we could check the forums. I'll log out and see. His body went stiff, the normal process in the game for when a player logged out. This prevented someone from just leaving the game in order to avoid dying and made their body stay visible and interactable for a few minutes unless they logged out from their binding stone, the magical device they could set to reappear at upon death.
A silver piece if I get the results faster than him,
Bonnie offered, flashing a full-toothed grin and giving him a wink.
2 if you want me to make him feel bad about being so slow compared to the great Bonnie.
Lucas nodded. He wasn't short on money. It was the one asset, unlike time, that he wouldn't run out of. I'll give you 3 silvers if he uses the word garbage while complaining about how hard it was to find, too, Lucas said with a laugh.
Deal.
Her body went just as still as Nick's almost as soon as she agreed, leaving the two standing in front of him, staring straight ahead with vacant expressions. Hey, Herman, Lucas called over. I'm going to need another glass of wine. He had never completely gotten past the heebie-jeebies that logged-out individuals gave him. There was just something not right about a body with nothing in it, though that was probably exactly how they looked in real life, sitting lifeless in their dive capsules as information was shoved into their brains and nutrients into their veins. I didn't realize Imperium soldiers hung out with so many non-humans, Herman said, clearly avoiding the word subs, which the others had used to describe themselves. That's really refreshing to— Lucas cut him off by taking the bottle of wine from his hand and tossing a coin into the air as payment. Just the wine, Herman. Just the wine. Herman chuckled and walked back behind the bar. which was much livelier than when Lucas had first walked in.
Whatever you say.
Lucas's character sheet. You may skip to the next chapter. Character name, Lucas. Level, -67. Hit points, 140. Arcane energy, 200. Stamina, 100. Current class, Mage. Stats, Arcanum, 10. Holy, 0. Athletics, 0. Fortitude, 0. Charisma, 30. Luck, 0. Unspent, 0. Current elemental attunement, none. Combat proficiencies, none. Chapter 3.
So you're saying it should be around here? Lucas asked as the trio crept through an abandoned-looking farm behind Keegan's manor. The farm had an odd gold and white, wheat-like grain product growing chest-high, and there were no trodden or used paths for the team to walk down. Instead, they just had to wander around, trying to find the secret entrance.
Yeah, and I think I just spotted the stupid thing we're supposed to be looking for,
Nick said, pointing to a small one-bedroom house in the middle of the field that was somehow perfectly maintained, despite the vegetation having overrun everything else.
You sure it's the right place? I thought we were supposed to look for a cozy home. Someone would have to dump a ton of money into that dump before it even came close to looking cozy.
Bonnie said from behind.
There's no decoration. The roof looks like it's plain wood. The thatch has all fallen off. The door is as boring as the wheat fields, and I'm pretty sure there isn't even a rocking chair out front. Whoever had this house needs to get a job.
You're asking me if it's the right place?
Nick grumbled.
It's your info that led us here, so if it's wrong, whose fault do you think it is? Stop saying stupid things and get moving.
Careful, little boy. You don't pay me.
Bonnie warned.
Mouth off too much before flipping me a coin, and I'll be brushing your bits off my tail.
Well, I don't think we need to wonder who succeeded or not. This definitely seemed like the right place, Lucas commented as he sped ahead of the two and approached the house. If there is a back way into Keegan's manor where we don't have to go through all the guards in front, it's gotta be here.
What makes you say that?
Nick asked as he caught up to Lucas and looked at the house.
Easy,
Lucas replied. He pointed to the wall, where a small piece of paper was tacked onto the door. Whatever player came here first tacked on a note.
Free of charge?
Bonnie asked incredulously. She lifted it away from its tack without removing it completely.
And helpful. It's even got a warning about what we're going to encounter. You don't run into this generosity in the later zones, not without getting it from a guildie.
Psh, could just as easily be someone trolling us. A trap set by a player with a bad sense of humor as much as a helpful hint left by a nice guy,
Nick warned as he looked at the note.
Not that it'd matter. What is this even supposed to say? What the heck does "follow the Silk Road to victory, but don't burn down the house" mean?
Could be talking about the loot we need to focus on,
Bonnie suggested.
Maybe the silk items in here have a high price. That'd be awesome. I could buy me a fancier dagger if we find something good.
Yeah, something like that, Lucas muttered, trying to imagine what Silk Road one would find underground. Oh well. He pushed open the door of the house to find an empty room. The only other exit was located at the bottom of a 3-person-wide staircase, which was located at the opposite side of the wooden shack from the door. The steps were neither wood nor stone. Rather, the stairs were dirt, and they looked as if they had been carved out once and then smoothed out by people walking. There was a dip in the center of the staircase where it had clearly been used most. No use pondering over it. Let's just get moving. After descending the stairs and opening the door, they were greeted by a dark and damp dirt tunnel that reminded Lucas of something more common in a cave, behind a waterfall, or out in the wilderness, rather than a tunnel dug out underneath a home. Anyone have a torch? Lucas asked. He couldn't see anything through the darkness that enveloped them at the bottom of the stairs.
I do,
Bonnie said, pulling one out.
I've got to stay prepared to meet my clients' needs, so consider it a complimentary service.
Lucas laughed. Service with a smile.
Don't need one here. Nick said as he began channeling Firebolt. Red energy ran through the staff and created a small globe of light that lit up the surrounding 5 meters. Right before he finished the spell and sent the burning orb tumbling down the hallway, he canceled it and began channeling it again. Even though it burnt arcane energy to do this, with how much Nick and Lucas had compared to how little the level 1 spell cost, they both could afford to do this. "Mages are the best," Nick said, sticking his tongue out at Bonnie immediately after. Lucas noted Nick's trick, but didn't bother doing it as well. Between Bonnie's torch and Nick's constant recasting of Firebolt, there was enough light that they could see everything around them. What had looked like only a simple dirt tunnel earlier was only made creepier by the addition of lighting. Patches of soil along the ground and areas of the wall were glistening with a sticky-looking substance, and there were strange droplets of water suspended midair.
This place gives me the creeps,
Bonnie said.
I hate places like this.
"I'm not going to argue with the fox," Nick said, rechanneling Firebolt yet again. "This whole place is garbage. What the heck did the player mean by Silk Road?" Lucas paused, and the other two stopped and turned around to see what the holdup was. "I think I know why there are so many droplets hanging in the air," Lucas said. "I think we're on the Silk Road." What do you mean?" "Stop messing with me," Nick said.
Yeah,
Bonnie agreed, crouching down to look at what Lucas was talking about.
none of this stuff is precious silk, and I don't see any worms on their way to Mama to make me some moolah.
"That's because silkworms aren't the only creature that makes silk," Lucas said, standing up and pulling out his staff. Nick, you might— "What? Stop speaking in riddles and just say what it is already. Freaking heck, man, why don't you—
Turn around!
Lucas shouted.
Turn around and cast! Now!
Nick hesitated a second before he turned around, finally spinning on his heel and throwing his channeled firebolt down the tunnel. "And what?" he demanded, panicked. "What am I casting at?"
At our feet! And then everywhere!
Lucas insisted. Rather than bothering with Firebolt himself, he began channeling Zap instead. Nick's second spell zoomed through the air and into the ground a few feet away, engulfing what appeared to be nothing in a ball of flame. "Why am I doing this?" Nick asked quizzically as he fired off another firebolt. Before Lucas had time to answer, however, experience points started appearing. There were a dozen death messages that read out 1 to 3 experience, no loot, and listed the enemy as Small Baby Spider.
Nope! Nope, nope, nope!
Bonnie shouted when she spied the messages. She began swinging her torch at the ground in wide arcs, ostensibly to keep the tiny arachnids away from her.
I don't care what you're paying me! No! Spiders are a no!
"Huh? Giving up so easily? Some mercenary you are!" Nick snapped snidely. He cast one firebolt after another down the tunnel, each one shooting farther than the last and garnering the group experience. "I guess you're not going to be collecting your paycheck!"
Hey!
Bonnie exclaimed.
I am not just some random merc.
With that, she reached into her backpack and pulled out a bottle of booze.
I will have you know that I am Bonnie, the queen of hired guns.
She heaved the bottle of liquor at the ground where Nick's latest firebolt was headed. Blazing heat exploded everywhere when the two connected, scorching the area around the shattered container.
Suck on this, spiders. I'm going to burn you all, even if I have to waste the quest's entire bounty and liquor costs to do so.
Lucas finished his third zap and sent yet another bolt of lightning crackling down the hall. He silently rejoiced when it didn't connect with anything. "Stupid rogue, that's not a flame," Nick snickered. "This is a flame!" He threw out another firebolt, but despite his melodramatics, it was still the same size as the previous one.
Will you just shut up already?
Bonnie cried, tossing the second bottle and scattering the flame farther forward. Since Lucas's first zap hadn't caught anything large, he was holding his energy back for a moment as he considered what to do next. "Is that all?" Nick asked after his next firebolt failed to garner a single death message or point of experience.
Maybe. I can't see anything more than black dots.
Bonnie said.
How did you even notice them, boss?
"I didn't see them at all," Lucas explained. "I just remembered the warning and saw the strings on the ground." There aren't many tiny creatures in the game, but I figured they still might be too small to see. I think what we saw were small droplets of water clinging to the web. I hate tiny mobs. Those stupid things are too small to hit and yet too damaging to ignore.
Well, good job.
Nick said, channeling another firebolt into the ground.
Free experience is all they are.
But didn't the warning mention not to use fire?
Bonnie said.
I mean, whoever wrote it ain't gonna tell me what not to burn. Damn denizens of nightmares those little things are. But it did mention not to use fire.
No, it said don't burn the whole house down. That was probably just a joke,
Nick reasoned. That's a lot of smoke, though, Lucas said, pointing to the gray and white clouds billowing up from the spreading flames where Bonnie had thrown the bottles of liquor. The growing plumes of smoke were even crawling across the ceiling. I mean, a lot.
Do we need to split? You think it's going to leak into the mansion and alert the guards, ruining your plan?
Nick asked. Not just yet, Lucas answered, but he started backing up even as he said it. He wanted to make sure that he'd have time to evacuate before anyone noticed him if someone did come down the hall, but he didn't think it was likely anyone would investigate.
I don't hear any footsteps. I think you're good, boss. But if it makes you feel any better, I can go forward some, check it out, stab some stuff to be sure. I mean, after the smoke dies down, of course.
Bonnie suggested.
Yeah, it's getting really smoky in here,
Nick commented.
I'm starting to struggle to breathe, too. Should we bail?
Just duck some and here. Lucas took out a spare shirt, ripped off 3 strips of cloth, and then tossed it to Nick and Bonnie. Just in case. It won't help much, but it should slow down any damage we start taking.
"'Kay,"
Nick said, as he grabbed the cloth and wrapped it around his mouth as a makeshift mask.
"But I don't get it. Alcohol doesn't make smoke like this. I've burned plenty of stuff back home. Molotov cocktails blow up with big flames, but they never produce smoke like this."
Bonnie nodded.
Yeah, he's on to something. This ain't exactly right.
No, it isn't, but I don't think it's the alcohol that's causing the smoke. You see that? Lucas asked. Look at that. He pointed to the center of the flames, where the first bottle of liquor had burst open and waited for them to catch on. It was only slightly noticeable at first, but the longer the flames burned, the more obvious it became. The dirt floor was slowly sinking. It's burning away the ground.
"How the heck does dirt burn?"
Nick asked, his voice muffled by the torn cloth. No, we only assumed that it was dirt. Lucas grabbed Nick with his left hand and yanked the mage back. We're walking on a hardened web disguised with a thin layer of dirt by whoever put this dungeon together. Lucas himself couldn't believe it at first, but there was no way to deny it. One layer of web after the other was revealed as it burned away, making it look like an abandoned hornet's nest had been set ablaze. The edges of the hallway pulled back and crumbled, and then the middle followed suit. Finally, after a few more minutes, the floor where Bonnie had thrown her booze collapsed with a loud sucking sound, revealing a giant hole.
"What the hell made that?"
Nick asked.
Oh no! Nope!
Bonnie began backing away, clearly panicked.
Let's ditch this right now, boss! Stop staring at it and come on! There ain't shame in running! I'll give you a discount! I'll call off the price for this whole mission! Let's just get the hell out of here!
Nick grinned, cackling to himself.
"Don't tell me you're afraid, are you? Let's go down there and kill everything. Let's burn them to the ground! Screw that note. I say we make sure we burn the whole damn house down. A good flame's beauty needs to be spread to whatever the hell that is."
The only thing in the hole that was visible from where Nick and Lucas were standing was the thick spider webs denoting what was obviously a mini-boss room. Lucas wasn't 100% sure why he even signed up with Shunguan when she had laid out the plan for him to be a villain. He had done it so hesitantly, like he had been pushed into it. It was just like the days when Yu Hua would drag him from one dumb outdoor activity like hiking or fishing to the next, telling him he had to learn to enjoy the small stuff, to lie back, relax, have a picnic, and stop focusing on his work. But that wasn't me. Lucas realized, staring at the hole in front of him.
I wasn't always the type to just lie back and do nothing.
Previously, he had been the active one, the driven one.
If there was a problem, I had to solve it.
He jumped around Bonnie and Nick and then dove toward the newly formed opening.
Paycheck!
Bonnie yelled from behind Lucas.
Paycheck! Don't leave me!
Now that's what I'm talking about! Nick shouted as he chased after Lucas. Lucas jumped through the ring of fire, taking 5 damage from the flame and another 20 from the short fall as he landed in the center of a cavernous room. The walls and ground were solid rock and granite, and there were dozens of large, silk strings as thick as a man's arm strung to and fro, holding up the bodies of what looked like Imperium soldiers. The ground was covered by a thin layer of water, making the entire place look like one giant puddle with dry patches of rock peeking through. Lucas was certain the jagged rocks would cut into his feet if he wasn't careful. Ouch! Nick cried, landing beside him. Ugh! Where in a box of burnt popcorn are we?
And what do I do now?
Lucas wondered, ignoring his cursing sidekick. Without Bonnie's torch or Nick's firebolt, the only lighting available to see by was the little filtering down from the flames above as they continued to burn away the spiderweb. He could use the firebolt trick to generate a bit of light again, but it likely wouldn't be enough in such a large space. What's that? Nick shouted suddenly, twisting around and firing one of his spells at a wall where a noise came from. The magic didn't strike anything, but the flash of light was enough to finally illuminate a small part of the cavern. Lucas immediately knew exactly where they were. A hatchery. The eggs were about twice the size of a basketball and stacked in clusters, covered in a layer of webbing and mucus, and there was an occasional skull or femur lying about with a thin layer of glistening web next to it. I've never seen so many eggs! Nick shouted again, this time with much more panic in his voice. He twisted about from side to side, shooting spells as fast as he could at batches of eggs. Images of what those egg sacs might release flashed through Lucas's mind, and he joined in on Nick's spellcasting frenzy. Scorching flames erupted from their staves in every direction. Then, the ceiling above cracked open, and a falling object struck Nick on the head. Ugh! Son of a dry, crusty tart! One of them is above us! Nick shouted, directing the spell he had been channeling toward the roof of the cavern. Bonnie's cry stopped him.
Wait! Just stay safe, Moneybags! I'm almost down!
She shouted down as she dropped the end of a rope down through the new hole.
Don't go anywhere! Don't you dare die on me, Mr. Deep Pockets!
Don't stop! Lucas warned. Those eggs might hatch at any time! He turned and thumped the momentarily befuddled Nick on the back with his staff, urging him back to his task of turning the room into an inferno once again. Lucas knew that it was incredibly unlikely that any monster would pop out of its egg at the exact moment a random adventurer happened to show up, but this was a game, and there was a good chance that the developers might have had a sick sense of humor. I'm starting to see why no one does the Sir Keegan subjugation quests, Nick grumbled.
It's not for lack of trying.
A deep, silky voice echoed through the chamber. The voice was slightly off-key and hissed more than spoke over a loud, crackling noise like someone had taken 2 large styrofoam objects and rubbed them together. Stridulation, Nick said quickly. It's a big one by the sound of it, too. Stridulation? Lucas asked, looking around to try and see where the voice had originated as he fired off a few more spells at the last remaining eggs. It's that sound insects and arachnids make when they rub their mandibles or body parts together, Nick explained. From how loud that is and how much it sounds like a saw? Whatever we're about to face is huge.
It's rude to call a lady big.
The voice hissed. A clicking sound filled the room and bounced around the chamber this time, making it impossible for Lucas to discern its origin.
Where in the hell are you?
Even if we are big, no one wants you to point out what we already know.
The grating speech was punctuated by a loud, clicking laugh. The cords! Lucas realized that the giant, Arm-thick, silk-like strands hanging throughout the room were resonating as the creature spoke, making it seem as if her voice was coming from all directions at once and leaving the three of them turning about endlessly as they tried to find her. Lucas wasn't sure how conductive the cords might be, but he wanted to test a small theory. Instead of shooting off another firebolt, he swapped his skills up and fired a zap of electricity at the closest cord. There was a small puff of smoke the moment the lightning struck the strand, frying the silken cable and leaving two severed ends to fall away limply.
Come now. Don't be like that,
the spider said.
I just wanted to say hello.
Nick followed Lucas's example and zapped another one of the cords. The monstrous arachnid giggled, and the water behind them exploded as its owner made her entrance.
Well, if I can't say hello from afar, perhaps I should say it up close.
Lucas grimaced as water rained down around them, and he turned around in time to watch a massive stone split open and a pair of legs appear through the opening. The beam-like appendages turned upward and then jabbed down into the ground as she began hoisting her massive body through the opening, one set of legs at a time. She wasn't joking about her weight, Lucas thought. When she was finally upright, the spider's back scraped against the roof of the cave above. Lucas groaned when he finally got a good look at the creature. It had two pairs of sharp mandibles, a smaller set situated inside a larger set, and all 8 of its glowing red eyes were the size of soccer balls, making them stand out against its hairy, solid black carapace. Still, despite the creature's menacing appearance, her abdomen was so fat that it had to be dragged along by her spindly legs.
I've heard of people dragging their arse around at work before, Nick said in reference to the spider's inability to walk without her whole abdomen scraping against the ground. But this seems more literal than usual.
Why is this my first job?
Bonnie grumbled.
Boss, that thing is... Why couldn't we have just killed people? I hate spiders.
Sorry, Lucas laughed, charging up Zap again. Nick began blasting out firebolts while Lucas finished charging up his lightning, and the flame-blasting mage was already on his 3rd spell by the time Lucas aimed his first shot. Lucas had high hopes as he watched the lightning tear through the air and strike the monster, but those dreams were dashed just like the bolt of electricity when it fizzled out against the monster's face.
Oh, that tickled,
she mocked, clacking her creepy mandibles together.
I wonder if it'll tickle when I eat you too.
Her front legs extended and slowly began dragging her massive body toward them.
That thing ain't getting hurt at all.
Bonnie complained.
God, no. Nope. Don't make my first death a freaking spider. Ugh. You don't pay me enough for this, boss. We need to get out of here.
What did you secure the rope with? Lucas asked.
Nothing that'll hold all 3 of us,
she answered. Well, there's no way around it either, Lucas pointed out. The spider wasn't large enough to fill the width of the long cavern, but each of its legs would likely have a 10-foot reach and be able to pierce them if they tried to run around the giant arachnid. Backward? Nick suggested. Without waiting for an answer, he turned around and sprinted away, shooting a few spells off to give light as he ran while awkwardly holding his staff in front of him.
Don't run,
the monster cooed.
It's been so long since I've had any real flesh to taste. The bugs down here may have the crunch, but they lack the flavor. Just be kind to me and get in my mouth.
The slow-moving behemoth of a spider dragged itself forward, inching closer and closer to the party. Yup! Run! Lucas shouted. He grabbed a hold of Bonnie's hand and pulled her away after him, stopping her from distractedly rummaging through her bag.
But boss, hold on!
She exclaimed. But her protestation was to no avail. Lucas dragged her toward the far end of the cavern. He didn't have any particular attachment to the woman, but he suspected that watching someone be eaten alive, by a giant spider no less, would kill his appetite for days.
I need to get a big range weapon out. I know I got a bow in here somewhere.
Why? That thing was clearly immune to our fire and lightning. What do you think an arrow will do? Nick shouted back, having heard her cries.
It's the type of damage that's the problem,
Bonnie explained.
This isn't some level 30 dungeon. It's still doable. It's just the type of attack that matters. Lightning deals concentrated heat damage, and fire is all heat damage, and the note told us not to try burning it. We just need to switch the damage type. Come on, boss. Give me a minute to find my bow. I swear, I'm prepared for even this too.
Lucas and Nick exchanged a glance with each other at that thought. Earth Spike, they said in unison. It was the only spell they had that didn't do elemental damage, even though Earth was an element, since the damage dealt by those types of spells was often simply flagged as physical. I'll shoot at the left side, and you shoot at the right, Lucas instructed. He turned around to see the giant black abdomen being dragged toward them, and crackling sounds filled the chamber as its body scraped against the rocks jutting up from the pool. My right or its? Nick asked.
Guys, wait a dang freaking moment. I've almost got a bow. I swear I have one in here.
How much do you have in there that you're having trouble finding one medium-sized weapon? Nick asked incredulously.
A good merc is always prepared,
Bonnie answered back proudly.
Although, I do admit that I need a utility belt or something. This thing is such a pain to go through.
Hit your right, not its, Lucas said loudly, directing their focus back to the monster bearing down on them. And whatever you're doing, do it quickly! Got it! Nick acknowledged. He hesitated a second longer, as if waiting for Lucas to make the first move, and then charged back toward the demonic-looking creepy-crawly they had left behind them. The spider hissed gleefully when it saw the two headed for her.
Good. I do so hate it when my food runs. It's really hard to catch up these days,
she complained.
Could you two be so kind as to come a little closer?
Not only did he have to channel his energy through the staff, but Lucas also had to focus on where the spike would erupt from the ground, making it incredibly hard to aim while on the move. Some of the higher-level players might have been able to do it on the fly after so much practice, but he was still fairly new to the whole experience despite how much time he had spent in the virtual world. Nick's spell went off first since he had clearly put more points into Arcanum than Lucas, and the stone lance sprang up from the ground and stabbed upward into the left side of the monster's abdomen. Lucas was activated almost immediately after, piercing into its opposite side. Unlike Firebolt and Zap, this attack seemed to actually work, digging into the arachnid's exoskeleton with its 2 to 3 inch diameter spikes and ripping small holes in its massive carapace. Lucas celebrated silently when he saw the holes leaking blood. He was already concentrating on casting another spell. Just then, an arrow whizzed past his head as the two fired off a second round almost in unison, all 3 attacks wounding the spider again.
Why must my food be so annoying?
The spider hissed angrily, turning slightly so that it was facing Nick. Bonnie shouted triumphantly as she shot another arrow at the beast, causing the spider to turn its attention to her instead.
God, your belly is about as fat as the paycheck you're going to earn me,
Bonnie taunted.
You really shouldn't be so mean about my weight,
the spider warned. As the words left the creature's mouth, so did a giant glob of steel-like webbing that it spewed directly at Bonnie. The woman nimbly dodged to the side, but her tail was slower than she was, and the blob of webbing wrapped itself around it. She immediately produced a knife and began sawing away at the entrapping substance, trying to cut herself free, but the spider seized the opportunity presented. She spat out wad after wad, coating Bonnie's torso and legs in the sticky substance. Nick and Lucas continued throwing earthen spears at the monster, but the small wounds they managed to inflict weren't significant enough to stop the spider.
Making fun of me, bullying me. For that, you're first.
The spider hissed loudly. The cracking and clicking sounds grew louder, and it took Lucas a moment to realize that it was because the massive arachnid was using its 2 inner mandibles to pull the strands of webbing that now bound Bonnie up from head to toe back toward it, reeling in the fox girl little by little.
Nope, nope, nope!
Bonnie screamed as her body was dragged across the ground.
This is not the fantasy game I signed up for! Please help me! Please help me!
Lucas and Nick were already doing everything they could to try and kill the beast as quickly as possible, but unless Lucas came up with something fast, there wasn't anything that he could do to speed up the process. Desperate, he turned his attention back to the new problem. He channeled a zap and fired it off at the cocoon of webs that held her bound in the hopes that the webbing would fizzle away like the silk cords had before. But the shock of energy only cut through some of the webs and not the massive lump that had Bonnie. The destroyed silk was immediately replaced as the spider spewed out more and more webs onto Bonnie while dragging her. Lucas also tried a firebolt, but the fresh mucus on the web must have made it resistant to burning because the blast barely singed the cord.
Please, boss, please!
Bonnie begged.
I don't care about the money now! Just kill me before that thing eats me! I don't want to die to that thing! I don't want to be eaten alive! Just murk the merc and let me respawn! I'll make it up to you, I promise! Next mission, half price!
Her voice was cut off by a web that was sprayed across her face, sealing her mouth and her eyes.
It's so tiresome when your meal makes last requests, isn't it?
The spider grumbled, shooting out 2 more wads of silk at Bonnie's face for good measure. Lucas ground his teeth together and groaned in frustration. If that thing is airtight, then we have 2 time limits to work with. Without any other plan in mind, he shifted his focus back to attacking the giant creature. He had no doubt at all that he would be freaking out in Bonnie's position, unable to see, hear, or even move as a monster pulled you across the ground to your almost certain doom.
I can't say I'm used to eating things that talk,
he responded, trying to aim his earth spike toward the spider's face but missing for the 2nd time in a row.
Should I stick with its main body?
No, that'll take too long.
Why can't magic auto-aim itself like in the old MMOs from when I was a kid?
Lucas, Nick said. I don't think this is working. I think we're going to lose the girl.
Try hitting its mouth,
Lucas urged, hoping Nick was a better shot than he was.
Maybe we can stop her from dragging that half-off merc you brought me.
Got it, Nick said, channeling another spell. The 2 earthen spears finished casting at the same time and overlapped in a rare occurrence, striking the spider right through the face. Their combined force was just strong enough to crack through the creature's mandibles, but not quite hard enough to pierce through its brain and kill it. Instead, the attack left the spider grumbling, hissing, and scraping the broken mandibles against the rock shaft. It tried pushing its way forward, but its body was blocked by the earth spikes, which were close enough to almost form a single column. The creature strained, and Nick and Lucas watched, stunned, as it took the monster almost 5 seconds to finally break the combined spike and pull itself forward another inch.
Another one! There!
Lucas exclaimed, pointing at a spot directly in front of the monstrous spider. Nick and Lucas channeled again, and once more they managed to stack their spells on top of each other, creating a large 4 to 5 inch thick spike.
I thought 2 men weren't supposed to cross streams, bro!
Nick said with a chuckle.
Just do it again! There!
Lucas directed, pointing to another spot beside the first spike. Lucas was surprised at the fact the 2 of them were consistently pulling off a rather difficult procedure, knowing he owed much of the success to how good Nick was at playing a supporting role.
That shouldn't be so stubborn,
the spider protested. She was having trouble speaking through broken mandibles and around the blood leaking from the wound where Lucas's and Nick's earth spikes had first injured her.
One more! Right there!
Lucas ordered, pointing to another spot and watching as the 3 earth spikes together formed a miniature fence.
Okay, that should buy us some time. Get a knife!
Bonnie was no longer being dragged along since the beast's mandibles had been shattered, but the woman was still left to struggle against her restraints. She wiggled around and bounced up and down like a stranded worm trying to move. Lucas was quick to fetch his knife out of his backpack. It was still at the top of the bag since he had used it earlier when he had played the rogue during the intro quest, and he was able to start cutting away at Bonnie's bindings right away, freeing her mouth just enough so she could breathe.
Thank God! Get me out of this thing!
Bonnie pleaded as soon as the web was cut. But after Lucas had managed to stop the immediate threat of death, he turned back to the spider.
Sorry, Bonnie. We're kinda tied up here too,
Nick said, chuckling at his own pun. Lucas watched the big beast fail to pull itself through the 3 earth spikes. Even though they had blocked it, Lucas could tell just by looking that it would be free soon enough. Each time it pulled forward with its legs, little pieces of dirt shook free from the raised earth.
"Nick, help me finish the cage! They're next!"
Lucas shouted, pointing to where the next spike needed to be placed. One spike after the other, they managed to finally create a little cage around the large spider until it was entirely trapped, unable to crawl free.
"Now we just need to kill it," Lucas said.
"More earth spikes?" Nick asked. "Even if enough of them together seem to be trapping it, I don't know how long it'd take to actually kill the thing."
"Yeah, because when we raise them, they don't go all the way through the torso. It's more like they dig in a little and then stop. We need something more substantial."
Or, I don't know, you could free me!
Bonnie cried.
I'll shoot it with arrows, or check my bag. I bet I have something in it.
"No, that won't work."
Lucas shook his head.
"We're in a game. There has to be some element we can take advantage of to win. They wouldn't make a boss that was impossible at this level. That'd be dumb."
As the spider struggled in futility, lashing out at its prison cage with all 8 of its limbs, Lucas realized the big problem. He and his companions lacked force. They needed enough weight behind their attacks to actually kill it, but the biggest weight in the room was sitting right in front of them.
"Nick, focus your spike right under the center of its abdomen," Lucas said. "It's not moving, so hopefully this will work."
"Huh?" Nick seemed lost, but even while questioning Lucas, he followed instructions and created a small earthen spike right under the middle of the beast. Lucas, crouching a little so he could see better, noted where it rose and cast his own right on the same spot.
"Keep casting! Stack one on top of another!"
One by one, the spikes began to strike out of the ground and into the beast until the resulting pillar began to slowly lift the spider, with the spikes driving farther and farther into its belly.
No! If I'm going to die, will one of you please hop in my mouth so that I can have a last meal?
The spider asked as she was impaled deeper and deeper by the rising pillar.
"I did not know magic could stack like that,"
Nick said as the 2 of them worked together to finish killing the corpulent arachnid, completely ignoring its pleas. Where one spell had failed, multiple casts over and over again on the same spot had worked. The spider's own body weight and the durability of the earthen spikes worked in combination to skewer the creature and split its abdomen in 2, a giant pool of green arachnid blood spraying everywhere from the point of penetration.
"There, I think we did it,"
Lucas gasped, letting out a sigh of relief as he looked over at Bonnie's webbed and bound body lying on the ground next to them.
You have killed Lady Sabah, Mother of Spiders. You have been awarded 127 experience. The item Web of Deceit, 12 silver, and 9 copper have dropped upon death.
"Yep, we definitely did it,"
Lucas said again out loud. It was more for himself than anyone else, as if he were trying to reassure himself of the fact that the creature was actually dead, and he felt a wave of satisfaction wash over him as he took in the aftermath of his first real boss fight. He took a step toward Bonnie, and yet another stone spear shot up from the ground, striking the giant arachnid through the abdomen one last time.
"What are you doing?"
he asked warily.
"I'm making sure it's dead,"
Nick explained. "I don't want it to start standing up and attacking me the second I turn around."
"That's what the death message is for," Lucas chuckled. "Come on, man. You did get one, right?"
"Yeah, but what if that was just the reward for killing the first stage? What if the thing spawns giant flaming spider fangs and legs and lunges toward us? It could happen. Sometimes boss monsters play dead and give rewards and then wipe the whole party when they turn their backs to leave."
"Well,"
Lucas looked over at the spider's butchered corpse.
"if you say so, I guess. Keep up the good work."
"Plan to," Nick responded. While his buddy was busy committing cautionary overkill, Lucas went over to the fox girl and drew his dagger across the web. It didn't cut that deeply at first, barely slicing an inch or 2 into the thick, heavy, gooey binding that wrapped Bonnie up. But after several more passes and a lot of pulling and tugging, he finally freed her hands.
No! You should have just killed me!
She whined, clearly distressed and shaking in her small cocoon.
this is so gross. I'm going to be having nightmares for days. So creepy, so gross, so awful. Ew, 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 ew!
Well, you know, it's just a game, Lucas said, trying to reassure her as he cut away the remaining webbing off of her and sat her up. It's not that bad.
You know what? Next time we fight a giant spider, you can jump in front of the crazy doom web and tell me if it feels like just a game or not. How about that, boss? Sound like fun? Huh? Yeah, 'cause it sure as hell feels real.
Bonnie grumbled. You could have just turned off the pain sensors. Lucas tried to reason with her and then stopped himself. Never mind. Next time, I'll do my best to save you quicker.
You better! I'm not going through that again,
she said, her voice still shaking. You're too expensive to let die until I get my money's worth, Lucas joked, poking at her insistence that everything had a price. Speaking of, Nick began, stepping away from the butchered arachnid. You're not going to, be expecting any of our loot from these monsters, are you? 'Cause that wasn't part of the deal if you are. Find something good, then I take it? Lucas asked. He didn't know how Nick could tell what he got since he himself hadn't pulled the new item out of his backpack, but the name alone, Web of Deceit, sounded great. I don't know, but if it's called Spinner's Fang, it's gotta be good, right? Nick asked, reaching around to check his bag. A moment later, he produced a large dagger with a 6-inch blade protruding from the handle and a silk-wrapped grip that was shaped like one of the spider's fangs. The silk wrapping on the handle went through a tiny hole at the bottom of the jet black fang and then hung out the bottom of the dagger. Is that? Lucas pointed to the hanging cord of silk. Is that capable of growing? Can you manipulate it? Nick gripped the dagger, and Lucas saw a light glow from his arm as he channeled magic into it. Sure enough, the silk extended out toward the ground between him and Bonnie.
Don't you even think about it. I will murder you in your sleep,
Bonnie threatened, glaring at Nick. Hey, I didn't do anything, so don't give me that garbage. I was just testing it out, Nick said defensively. But Lucas noticed the smile plastered across his face as he backed up a step. Anyway, what did you get?
Gold,
she pouted.
Ugh, I want a knife. What about you, boss?
Lucas dug into his bag and pulled out the Web of Deceit, a magical cloak that apparently didn't have a set color. Instead, like a chameleon, it was constantly shifting to appear like a blurrier version of what was behind it.
What the heck?
Bonnie protested, looking back and forth between Nick's and Lucas's loot.
That's broken! That's stupid broken! How come I didn't get anything cool? Boss, let me have that cloak and dagger. You two are mages, so you don't need them. Let me use them!
Well, if you really want them, we can always redo the dungeon for you later, Lucas offered, watching as Bonnie's face paled at the prospect. I could use another dagger to match this one, Nick agreed. And it's not like the monster was particularly hard after we figured out the trick. Should be easy to repeat. Kinda surprised that more people haven't done this dungeon with these drops. Yeah, I am as well, Lucas said, throwing the cloak on and pulling its hood up. How do I look? Like someone pixelated the spot you were standing, Nick said. He and Bonnie both gave him an oddly disgusted look.
That just doesn't look right,
Bonnie commented, shaking her head.
It's creepy. It's like someone loaded an image, but one spot was still rendering when the internet gave way.
Whatever, Lucas sighed. Even if it wasn't perfect camouflage, and he'd still be noticed up close, this cloak meant that his relaxing naps outside would be that much less likely to be disturbed. Heck, even Shunguan, or whatever her real-life name is, might not be able to steal my cheese and wine while I'm in this cloak. Web of Deceit indeed. We've wasted enough time here. Let's get going.
Boss, how do we get out?
Bonnie asked.
I made sure to tie a rope to the top before I came down, but we've got a little problem. It kinda got lost during the fight. I think one of Nick's fireballs burned it.
No worries, Lucas said, pointing to the prison of earth spikes that had trapped the giant spider. We can just use those on the wall and make a ladder of sorts up. Nick nodded, looking at what Lucas was indicating. We can, can't we? But you sure you don't want to explore further in? See the rest of what this spider cave has to offer? Lucas gave the cavern one more glance over, but still couldn't see an exit. The only direction they could go was to enter the giant tunnel the fat boss had made with its body before appearing. Unfortunately, when he walked over and checked the hole, it was clear that the boss had just been waiting there the entire time. There were dozens of webs connected to it, but it was rather shallow, indicating that the fat spider must have been lazily lying just under the surface. Seeing that there was nothing to explore, the group used a ladder crafted from their spells to climb back up and then once more maneuvered down the corridor. There were no more interruptions as they journeyed through the caves, and they were able to navigate all the way into the manor's main building without running into a single spider. If we had just used frost breath instead of fire attacks to kill the little spiders, we wouldn't have even had to face off against the giant arachnid. At the end of the tunnel, there was a ladder leading up to a trapdoor. Bonnie went first.
Gotta go first before the boss starts thinking I'm dead weight and business suffers,
she grumbled under her breath, but still loud enough for Lucas and Nick to hear her as she climbed up the ladder into the room above. Don't worry, Nick responded. Your reputation is fine. You're clearly moving on up as we speak. After poking her head out, she gave Lucas and Nick the all clear before disappearing into the room. Lucas went next, and when he finished climbing the ladder and had crawled into the room, he realized that the pathway had led straight to Sir Keegan's study. There was a wooden desk covered with papers, books, ink bottles, and a quill, shelf after shelf of books, covering every wall except one, and several chairs in the middle of the room that looked as if they had been arranged for a meeting of sorts.
Whoa! I wonder how much that thing is worth,
Bonnie questioned, admiration clear in her voice. Lucas followed her gaze and discovered a giant oil painting with an ornate gilded frame. A beautiful young woman was being awkwardly embraced from behind by a much taller, average-looking man. Her forehead was covered by the top of the man's beard, but he was looking down at her as if she were the only person in the world. Lucas couldn't take his eyes off the portrait. Who are they?
Oh, that's Keegan and some girl,
Bonnie answered as she walked closer.
I remember seeing a picture of him when I was looking up info on the place, but he's much younger here.
We might not get much for the painting, but the craftsmanship on that frame is probably worth a fortune, Nick replied in answer to Bonnie's former inquiry about its value. I can't think of many people that would want a weird painting of two people they don't know. Does Keegan have a wife? Lucas asked. He had noticed a small gold band circling the woman's left ring finger. I thought he was single. Lucas trailed off, his eyes fixated on the two people's happiness, which had been perfectly captured by the paintbrush.
Well, the info I dug up said he's the only one that lives here,
Bonnie replied. Same from my source, Nick said. Maybe it's an old fling? Or possibly his parents?
Nah, the only way that'd work is if his dad were his identical twin,
Bonnie countered with a shrug.
But it's a game. They may have gotten lazy when generating the models.
Lazy? That's not possible. Lucas knew the answer this time. He might not have known much about the fighting and the game mechanics, but after seeing Junguan's face, he had looked up exactly how faces were generated. They were made by the developers, each one custom created using a DNA simulator that had been taken from either the game's original creators or generated from a random string of code. If two NPCs in a game had a kid, the game would generate a random potential DNA sequence from the pairing and use that to predict the kid's face and features. This method essentially prevented any two people from having identical features or looking like copy-pasted versions of each other like the characters in many of the earlier MMOs.
Well, whatever,
Bonnie said, going up to the painting and pulling out a knife.
I'll just jack this frame and make myself some money.
No! Lucas roared. He surged forward and grabbed the arm that she had raised to accost the artwork before he even realized what he was doing. Then, catching himself, he backpedaled verbally without actually moving. I mean, we can't disturb the area until we accomplish our goal. We'll be back here again, so don't be in a rush. All he could do was make up a lame reason which he hoped was believable enough to both excuse his outburst and prevent her from taking down the painting. Bonnie looked taken aback after his initial outburst, but nodded anyway, along with shooting him an apprehensive glance.
Gotta make it look like no one was here, or else the plan won't work, is it? Okay, I got it. I'll be careful, boss.
Sorry, Lucas said, realizing that he had scared her. Anyway, we need to look around here for an accounting book. Find something that looks like it has a bunch of notes on cash flows for the region. Lucas had no luck in finding the accounting book, but he did find a strange journal from Keegan. He knew he probably should have left it where it was, but he felt compelled to take it from the shelf for some strange reason. A quick glance over his shoulder told him that neither Nick nor Bonnie was paying attention, so he figured there wasn't any harm.
I found it!
Nick declared, startling Lucas in the middle of his attempt to stealthily pocket Keegan's journal. He pulled a book from one of the shelves and tossed it toward Lucas.
Great,
Lucas said. He caught the book with his left hand and hid the journal behind his back with his right.
Now,
look for some wax for seals and the royal stamp. I don't know if Keegan's dumb enough to leave them lying around, but if we can find those, we'll be set.
Oh, sure. I saw those earlier.
Nick moved to a shelf adjacent to the one he was in front of and then lifted away a false segment, revealing a hidden compartment.
I thought the accounting book would be hidden here as well, but this old goon had them in completely different places.
How in the heck did he discover a fake board on a bookshelf? I would never have noticed that, Lucas thought as he finished hiding Keegan's journal and took the accounting book over to the table.
That's all we need then,
Lucas said, opening the book. There were no modern slice-of-life conveniences from the real world, leaving most players to create magical devices in place of electronic ones, but one feature that the game did allow was a camera. Players were allowed to take screen grabs and photos that could be posted to the game's forums or on social media accounts. It was an easy way for players to share their experiences and capture memories, and it was a fast and easy promotion for the company. Taking advantage of the tools given to him, Lucas used that same tech to quickly snap pictures of each of the book's 49 pages. When he was finished, he rifled through the pages on the desk until he found an incomplete contract. Grabbing the nearby quill and dipping it into the inkwell, he scribbled in a few bogus numbers and statistics. When he was finished, he took the purloined seal, dabbed it in some wax, and made his handiwork official. He repeated the process 10 separate times, setting each page aside after taking note of the modified numbers, dates, and the minutes he listed on a separate sheet of paper.
What are you doing?
Bonnie asked as she watched Lucas work. I'm making fake contracts, Lucas replied. Keegan's signature is pretty easy to copy, and these will be indistinguishable from real ones. The noble's wax seal is like this age's version of a notary, so if the signature and the seal both are authentic-looking enough, no one will believe either is fake.
So, you're going to put him out of business? I don't get it,
Bonnie replied. She walked across the room and hovered over Lucas's shoulder uncomfortably, studying Lucas's every movement.
And why bother? Do you really think, even with his seal, he'd honor a contract he knows is fake?
You're right, Lucas agreed. He wouldn't honor these at all. Even with his seal, he'd probably be able to argue in court that he never received goods or services for the amounts claimed, and we'd never win. But that's not the point. I'm not making contracts that have him buying things from us. I'm saying he sold things to us in these contracts and that he already received the money.
What? Why would you do that?
Bonnie pressed.
I don't get it. What's the point of saying he sold stuff to us?
He's making them to legitimize a fake ledger,
Nick answered for him.
If you're going to be a merc, you should know how this stuff works. You might be asked to do this for another client one day.
Yep, that's exactly what I'm doing. I plan to make several dozen contracts that show Keegan got a ton of money from other sources. In the Imperium, if he received money, he should pay taxes on it. It's no different than real life. Even if it's not true that he received funds, all we have to do is prove that he didn't pay dues on the money he earned to make his original books look like they were cooked and the fake book we're going to make look real. So, if I take these fake contracts along with the fake accounting book that I'm going to make to Dre von Maidbinger, Keegan will be in hot water and we'll have freed that annoying dwarf's friend in the process, Lucas explained.
And then we can kill Keegan and take this stuff to sell?
Bonnie asked. Lucas nodded, leaving the other half of the question unanswered.
Then we can kill Keegan.
Sounds good to me, boss. I'll be looking forward to killing my first noble.
She stepped away so that she was no longer leaning over his shoulder as he worked, pulled out a dagger, and began spinning it around on the palm of her hand. She looked incredibly cool when she did it at first, like she was a real professional. But then she messed up. The knife flew out of her hand and clattered against the floor. Nick laughed, and Lucas had to stop himself from joining in as he watched her quickly bend over to pick it up, covering her cleavage with one hand so that she didn't spill out of her top. She straightened up and gave them a nothing-to-see-here look.
Well, we have what we need. Put these back where you found them, and let's get out of here before anyone notices we were ever here at all.
Lucas passed the real accounting book and seal back to Nick so that he could stash them where he found them. He knew that he should have put the journal back, too, if he wanted to make sure that Keegan didn't notice their presence, but some nagging feeling in the back of his mind encouraged him to keep it.
What are you doing keeping the journal?
Lucas shook his head, took one last long glance at the painting of Keegan and his wife, and then opened up the trapdoor and began his descent back down into the cavern below.
So, not to be optimistic and claim the bounty early,
Bonnie began, giving Lucas a big, wide-eyed and expectant look.
but I think the first quest was successful, wouldn't you say?
Lucas didn't want to jinx it since he had actually messed up horribly by taking Keegan's journal, but he couldn't outright ignore her question either.
Yeah, it should be.
Then...
Bonnie's grin grew bigger.
You think it's okay to pay us those 5 gold coins yet? I mean, you got to go make that whole accounting book and whatnot, and that's gonna take time, right? So paying me now would be okay, right?
5 gold coins, is it?
Lucas looked over at Nick. He hadn't expected the greedy kid who had swallowed his own pride for money to not cheat the one person he had managed to hire. The fact that Nick didn't act as the middleman and skim even a single coin was shocking.
Yeah, boss,
Bonnie asserted.
that's what Nick told me. 5 gold coins. And don't even try to cheat me a copper.
Wouldn't dream of it.
Lucas pulled out 6 gold coins, tossed Bonnie 5 of them, and then threw one to a confused Nick, who likely didn't expect to get anything more for this particular quest since Lucas had already paid him.
Now, if you two want to go level, have at it. Just make sure not to kill any Imperium. I'm going to need a bit of time to finish creating the replica accounting book, so go have fun.
They climbed out of the tunnel and exited back through the shabby hut into the overgrown field.
Will do, boss,
Bonnie said, running ahead of Nick and Lucas toward the village. Nick darted after her, leaving Lucas alone to meander back toward the tavern. He pulled out Keegan's journal during the walk and began scratching the itch on his brain that had been nagging him since he first found it. The first few pages were less journal entries and more Keegan's thoughts and ideas. They detailed small activities he was planning to do with the territory, little things like a festival for all the farmers on his land, a weekly feast at the local tavern to keep morale up, or small ways he planned to improve the agricultural utility of the people. The entries discussed the people he planned to work with, the type of holidays he wanted to put together, and his hopes for the settlement near his manor. Seeing the actual town and hearing the way the people in it talked about Keegan, it was hard to imagine that he was the same man who wrote the journal. But the handwriting matched easily. A quarter of the way through the journal, however, Lucas came across a dozen or more pages that were completely different. Whereas every other was filled from top to bottom, front to back, with words, ideas, and tiny little drawings that were either maps or inventions Keegan was working on, and were crisp and neat without so much as a bend or fold on them, this one was wrinkled a little, almost as if it had been left out in the rain before drying, and clearly depicted the same woman whom he had seen in the painting. Each page thereafter was another drawing of her, and each drawing left Lucas feeling a little more hollow and empty inside.
I did this as well.
Lucas stared down at the drawings, instantly feeling the loss and regret in them. He had always cursed himself for not having more pictures of Yu Hua, and he had been unable to stop himself from drawing her portrait for weeks after she was gone. He would have done anything to fill the void in him that yearned to remember her image. The images eventually came to an end, and the words resumed. There weren't as many as before, and most pages contained only a single paragraph. Freed or broken, there can be no in-between. We hold their chains, all of them, and so long as they have the strength to do so, they will pull at their chains. They will yank and tug at the collar we have fitted them with until either they or their collar break. Even if they were freed, I don't doubt in my heart for 1 minute that they would try to attack us with the broken chains. I should have known this. I should have curtailed your mercy, as every history book had taught me. This was my fault. My heart was weak to your plight, and you to theirs. I'm sorry, Isabel. I tried to appease them, to be good. For your sake, to make you happy. I wanted our lands to be a paradise for all people of all kinds. But I couldn't keep them happy. As soon as our poverty demanded I tighten the slack on their chains again, I'm sorry. Lucas felt his throat lock up as he stared at the page, reading the lines over and over again.
A rebellion, he concluded as he went over the paragraph. His wife died in a rebellion. Those ideas, those pages, they weren't hopes and dreams. He had done them. They were records and memories. He had done them all, and when he ran out of money and couldn't keep doing them, they rebelled.
Lucas sighed, unable to control his own heart as he imagined what Keegan must have gone through. It had been hard reading that. Out of all of the villains of the Imperium on Noob Island, this particular noble's earlier days had been that of a saint in comparison. The woman who had pushed him to do the right thing, who had encouraged him to throw away the Imperium's bigotry, was dead because of it. The next 3 or 4 pages were blank, and then Lucas reached one more page with text. It was only a single sentence this time that read, "I will break them all." Each letter left such a deep imprint that it might have been dug out with a fingernail before ink ever touched the paper. There were more writings on the pages after, and Lucas wanted to keep reading, but he had already reached the tavern and knew he had to get to work. Lucas had the whole place to himself due to the fact it was the middle of the afternoon, so he posted up at the same table he had eaten at earlier after giving Herman a nod. He reached into his bag, took out a bottle of ink, a quill, and a blank book that he had brought during his first days in the game world when he had thought that he might want to draw as well.
"Will you be wanting something to drink?"
Herman asked, coming over while Lucas was still setting up his workspace. Lucas was about to ask for a glass of wine when he stopped himself. "Actually, I had a question, Herman."
"What's that, sir?"
Herman responded. "Who is Isabel?" Lucas asked, watching Herman's face drain of color as the words left his mouth. Herman gulped.
"Mr. Lucas, I believe that is not an appropriate question to ask."
Is that so? Lucas scratched his chin, thinking about the reaction. Herman had instantly gone from a healthy color to that of a ghost, but the young waitress who was constantly in his shadow hadn't reacted at all. Is Isabel a point of shame for her, too? Or was it before her time? His eyes darted between the two incredibly different expressions. Then, do you know if Sir Keegan has a wife? Or perhaps an heir?
"I'll bring you a glass of wine and some cheese, Mr. Lucas."
Herman gave a weak smile before quickly turning away and departing. There is definitely more to the story than what's recorded in this journal. Lucas wanted to investigate further, his curiosity burning like an itch he couldn't properly scratch once again. But he resisted. He still had work to do if he was ever going to be a proper villain. Lucas's character sheet. You may skip to the next chapter. Character name, Lucas. Level, -66. Hit points, 150. Arcane energy, 200. Stamina, 100. Current class, Mage. Stats, Arcanum, 10. Holy, 0. Athletics, 0. Fortitude, 0. Charisma, 30. Luck, 0. Unspent, 10. Current elemental attunement, none. Combat proficiencies, None.